I'll tell you.
Good? Okay. Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order. A little closer? A little closer. Okay, good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'm Lori Cunningham. I'm the board vice president. Phyllis Vogel is out this evening. So we're going to begin with the flag salute. So please stand. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. So our first item up on our agenda tonight is to announce and celebrate our district's April 2019 Classified Employee of the Month. So Fran Williams, can you please come up and join us at the podium? So right up to the podium. Thank you, Fran. Okay, so here's how this goes. I am going to read some lovely things that some of your colleagues had to say about you, and then we're going to invite any of your colleagues or friends or family that you have here if they'd like to say anything, and then, of course, we'll give you an opportunity to say anything you'd like to say as well. Okay? All right. So CUSD's April 2019 Classified Employee of the Month, Fran Williams, School Secretary 1, Faria Elementary School. Deb Stoddard, a second grade teacher at Faria, wrote the following in support of her nomination for Fran for this honor. Fran is an amazing asset for Faria. In spite of many overwhelming responsibilities, she maintains a professional, friendly demeanor. Fran takes care of our school's student attendance records. This past year, she managed the registration of nearly 800 applicants to Faria. She accomplished this Herculean task in addition to her regular job duties. In addition, due to student moves, Fran processed nearly 70 additional new students at the beginning of the school year. This was in addition to the added kindergarten and first grade students. Her diligence and dedication keep our classes full and our students well cared for. Fran is also an ace with all that happens in the front office. Her patience and kindness with student concerns make our kids feel safe and loved. No question from us goes unanswered. She patiently sets aside her tasks to help resolve problems from staff and parents alike. Lacking a special programs coordinator in the front office, Fran cheerfully picked up the duties that are usually handled by the SIP coordinator so that various student programs will not be lacking. Fran has also been instrumental with new administrators coming to our school by helping with the logistics and organization of schedules and tasks. It is with pleasure that I nominate Fran for the district's Classified Employee of the Month. Hard work, dedication, and simply being a lovely person make her a joy to work with. Thank you. Okay, so is there anyone here who would like to speak for Fran? Great. Welcome, Mary. Mary is our principal at Faria.
Yes. So I have to say what I wrote is not nearly as eloquent as Deb Stoddard, but we'll get started. So first, let me say that I really have learned how classified employees in a school are so important. They're the gears and the motor that keep schools running through the thick and thin. And at Faria, during Fran's tenure, she's worked with and trained, me being one of them, 3 principals and many changes in our office staff. As I say, she's our calm lighthouse keeper. She gives us adequate warning when things are coming up, and she suggests processes that have worked in the past, and her tremendous role has really made my job much easier this year. But Fran's gift is to our students, staff, and parents through her approach when she's working with them in the office. Maybe it's the time when Fran is taking in late students in the office when she reminds them, do you have an alarm clock? You can get some great music. Get your parents to get you an alarm clock. Or when she talks to parents that are coming in, the new kinder parents, and she says, welcome to Faria. You're going to love it here. She's also trained our noon helpers, our fourth grade helpers, and she's got lots of experience to give them all the wise words of working with the little ones, as well as how to call for help if necessary. So Fran is truly A+ in our book at Faria, and we're so grateful to have her here. And we are just so lucky and grateful that we're able to recognize her in this way for not only Faria, but for the district. So thank you very much, Fran.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else who was hoping to speak tonight? Go ahead.
I'm Sheila Ruth. I'm the union steward for the CSCA. And this is for Fran, congratulating her for Employee of the Month from her fellow brothers and sisters in CSCA.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Thank you. Great. Anybody else?
I'm Deb Halford. I've known Fran for many years. We were special programs coordinators together at different schools, and we would call each other and say, "Okay, how do you do this?" I guess the biggest thing that comes to mind about Fran is she's a fighter in a nice way. Think of her as a warrior. She fights for those that she believes in, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Anybody else? Okay, Fran, we're going to give you the opportunity to say a few words. Oh, one more. Oh, sorry. Thank you, guys.
With all of that, she's also a perfect daughter and a wonderful mother.
Mom, why don't you stay up so that when we take pictures, you can be in the pictures?
She's really good.
Well, that was a perfect segue because what comes to my mind is the word family. And I used to hear about the Faria family, and I'm like, oh, okay, the Faria family, whatever. But now that I'm part of the Faria family, I totally get it. They're a wonderful group to work for, and I feel like this is deserving of everybody at that school, all the staff and all the support. It just is a real family, and I'm so happy to be part of it and happy to call myself a member of that family. So I feel like I'm just a small part, and I wish I could share this with everybody. So I certainly will do that. It's been a pleasure. It really has. Thank you. And I will introduce my family. That was my mom, Faye, her husband, John, my husband, Reese, all the way in the back, and my brother, Marshall.
Oh, great. So great to have you here tonight. So, Fran, we'd like to get a picture with you, and if you'd like any of your family or friends to join us, please do. So we have a certificate for you and the words that were written for your nomination and a little something
Thank you
from
so
the
much.
district. And yes, thank you so much for all you do.
It's a pleasure.
Join us for a picture.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Can I set that down? Well, I'll take the flowers. I'll take the flowers.
Keep the flowers. Absolutely.
Alice?
Yeah.
Come on in.
Come on, brother.
Family, all in.
Oh, you want?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Here you go. Very nice.
Fran, one more.
Oh, another one.
One more.
Okay.
Back in, sorry.
Everyone back in?
Okay, so next up, we have our school highlight. We are going to hear tonight from our powerful readers at Lincoln Elementary. So if you will join us. Proud dad.
Shameful.
It is. No.
Totally get your picture.
Yeah. No, my daughter's not here. It's not here.
Good evening. Tonight we're thrilled to have Lincoln Elementary here to talk about their work and reading workshop and also how they're personalizing instruction through that workshop. We have students here who are going to talk about where they currently think they are as readers and what they're personally working on towards reading or in reading as readers. Yeah. Lots of readings. But the one thing that I would point out is that personalized learning, including student goal setting, is a cornerstone of any workshop model. So I'd like to introduce Ann Kropp, the principal at Lincoln.
So Lincoln's journey began with the implementation of Units of Study Writing Workshop in 2016. This was a big shift for both our students and for our teachers. We moved from more assigned writing tasks to a workshop format that allowed for choice and personalization. In 2017-18, we began our partnership with Teachers College. The staff development that we received from TC that year was pivotal in moving us forward and focused on one-on-one conferring and small group instruction. This year, we began implementing reading units of study, which closely mirrors the structure found in Writer's Workshop and again allows for that individualization and choice. I'm not sure why the slide is.
You might have to scroll it.
Use a trackpad. There we go. Okay, thank you. So workshop is structured to look like an apprenticeship. It begins with a mini lesson where students learn strategies from a proficient reader, in this case, the teacher. They then move into the independent section of the workshop, which is the time that they actually engage and read books, self-selected books at their independent reading level. It is during this time that teachers have one-on-one conferences with students and provide small group targeted instruction. The workshop concludes with a brief sharing section, during which time the teacher might highlight instruction that had gone on during that day, or perhaps highlight the strategies that the students are trying out in their reading. Teachers determine the instructional reading level using Rigby or Literably. Not only do these assessments help give the teacher a level, but it gives important information about the strategies that the students are either using or perhaps not using yet in their reading. The reading units of study in grades 3 through 5 has a learning progression, and it's a tool that shows how the reading strategies build on one another over the course of the grade levels. Teachers can use this tool to really pinpoint instruction and decide upon next instructional steps. There is also a performance assessment in grades 3 through 5, which can be used at the beginning of a unit, again with the idea of individualizing and personalizing that instruction. We want students to know where they are as readers, where they are going, and what strategies they need to use to get them there. Tonight, we have 4 Lincoln students who will talk to you about where they are with their reading and what their next steps are.
Hello, I'm Ashita, and I'm in 2nd grade. As a reader, the thing I'm best at is keeping track of the story. If I notice I've lost the storyline, I restart the book and check my post-its to see if I've written down enough events to retell the full chapter. If I notice an event got skipped, I write the event on another post-it and add it to the chapter. We're doing book clubs in class. I'm in a group where everyone in the book club has a goal of keeping track of the storyline and not losing it. I'm reading Dragon of the Red Dawn. When everyone in the book club has the same goal, it makes it easier. We share ideas and try other people's ideas too. It's working pretty good. Sometimes when reading, I feel like I need to get the fluency a bit higher. We've learned reading aloud in our head and scooping up words into longer phrases. That way, it doesn't sound like a robot reading. Sometimes I stammer a bit on words, but I think I'm getting better. Sometimes I get confused when literary language shows up. Words might have different meanings, but I might only know one. It's important to know the other meanings too. When literary language shows up, I determine what's happening in the big topic and keep testing different definitions of literary language until I find one that works. Thank you.
Jordan Enschel, Grade 2. I'm a reader who is interested in the next thing happening in the book. When I'm done, I always take a break before rushing to the next one. I think, what happened, especially in fiction books. I like nonfiction books when they give you interesting facts that you don't know. I feel very comfortable when I read because it's nice, quiet, and relaxed. You can imagine or be surprised by things happening in the story. I use a lot of strategies in my reading. I scoop up words to make my reading more fluent. As the books gets harder, it's not as easy for me to do that. So I go back and reread. The other strategy I use a lot is sounding out words. I look for punctuation to match the reader's voice, because if I read it in an angry voice when the character is happy, it will change the book. I don't rush because when you rush, it's harder to understand the book. The other strategy we've just learned is keeping track of longer books. I'm not too familiar with this strategy, but I know it's like if you put a sticky note on every chapter or every 2 pages, you'll find it a lot easier. You can go back and look and try to get a refresher of what happened in the story. I'm mostly working on reading more fluently and trying to understand literary language. Instead of saying she's happy, say she smiled with joy. This is hard, but I'm working with the group to help me. For literary language, our book group members find as much literary language as we can and mark it with a sticky note. We then bring it to the group, show them the hard words that we have it figured out, so everyone can work together to figure it out in groups. Working in groups helps me because it's easy to know that you're not the only one. If I can't figure it out, someone else may be able to help me, and we'll all try to crack the code. At home, I'm working on reading more fluently. It's hard for me to do it, especially as I'm reading PNQ books. But I'm working on reading easier books to build up my fluency. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Angela and I'm in 3rd grade. I'm good at getting lost in a book. I don't have a favorite book, but I love mysteries because they're so suspenseful. I love taking notes to figure out who's behind the mystery. When I get to a part I don't understand, I reread it. It helps me understand more and catch details I didn't catch the first time. The more I read, the more I understand. Sometimes I read on to see if there are more details ahead to help me figure it out. Mrs. Wynn taught us to think more about the characters. This is kind of hard for me. I'm working on focusing on the main characters, how they're tested, how they react, and why it's important. I stop when I'm reading to write my thinking on a post-it, so if we're having a book club meeting and I need to remember my thinking, it's right there. I'm also working on tracking more of my thinking because sometimes I get lost and forget to do it. If I do forget to do it, I always go back and write my thinking down. Keeping track of my thinking helps me to remember
why I thought something about a particular character. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Yvonne, and I'm in 5th grade. I love to read and read a lot for pleasure, especially Rick Riordan books. When I'm reading, I use context clues to help me understand words or parts I may not know. I use sentences like, have I seen a sentence like this before? Or what might it be about? I like to think about the whole book or chapter and get the bigger picture. We call it the whole bird's eye view. In Mrs. Rudiscold's class, we write about our reading every day. I push my thinking down the page. I think, what else? What else happened when I was reading this? Are there any more details I can go into? I'm working on my fluency. I say a lot, and am working on reading with lots of expression. I am also working on slowing down to really understand what I'm reading and really soak in what the author is trying to say. I might go back to the book, read it again in more detail to see if I missed anything. It's a whole different view. Topic-specific words can be tricky. I'm working on building up my knowledge so that I'm more familiar with words that might come up in particular topics, like space. Thank you.
So in closing, I think the success we're experiencing can be attributed to students reading books at their level and having that choice in what they read, reading on a consistent daily basis, students being taught specific strategies that they can apply in their reading, and finally, the personalization of the reading instruction. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here tonight. Do you have any questions for us?
Oh, really great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. They are wonderful.
All right, so we do have some certificates for the kids, so we'll be right up to join you. Oh, and photos, yes. If parents would like photos, please feel free to come grab a spot for that.
No, they don't want it.
He was doing it, yeah. He had planned like an introduction. Bomb.
Get in here. What are you doing? All right.
Okay, stay for the camera.
How do you take like 3 steps of this so that you don't have these
Yeah, we usually do it at a different angle.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
No, go ahead.
Good job, man.
Lincoln PTA is doing good, huh?
It's a wonderful school. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to move forward. Thank you so much to our Lincoln readers for coming and sharing with us tonight. I think that my colleagues will agree that's some of the best stuff that we get to do. So let's see. We are on to board agenda approval. And Craig, you have an item for us.
Yeah. So I'm going to request that we move consent item 4.6, approval of Homegrown Summer Institute contract, to after item 7.4. Just because those are actually related to each other, and it would be better to approve that contract after you have had an opportunity to talk about the reading program and hopefully approve it. So, yeah.
Yep, so I need a motion to approve the agenda with the moving 4.6 to after 7.4.
I move to approve the agenda as amended by Dr. Baker.
I second it.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, 2.1, employee organizations. Do we have any of our employee organizations that would like to speak tonight? I see.
Sheila might have wanted to do that as part of it. I'm not sure.
Do you want to do it as part of employee organizations or part of public comment? Okay, go ahead. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. We have Sheila Routh, CSEA classified.
It's Ruth.
Thank you, Sheila Ruth. My apologies.
That's all right. This evening, you're going to be considering a resolution for classified layoff positions. And I know you get a summarized version of what the FTE per position is. But I thought it might help if you had a little bit more of a breakdown. The school secretary positions are actually affecting 3 people, not 1. The IA general ed position is not 2 people, but 3. The school library media clerk positions are 4 schools, 2 of which are being reduced to 2 hours. A library cannot function in 2 hours. The special program coordinator position is 3. I know when you see that FTE notice, it seems like, well, you know, it's not much, but there is an effect. And there's going to be bumping involved in this, so people may be displaced from one site to another, have to get used to a whole new program, everything else, and it affects the way the programs work at the schools. I'm always advocating for the libraries, but I'm absolutely appalled that 2 schools will have 2 hours a day to run a library. You cannot administer it, let alone have classes come in and visit, do your book orders, your book repairs, all of the other things that you're supposed to do in a school library. 2 hours will only cover the admin part. And I think you need to consider that seriously. What haven't mentioned so far is the 12 FTE for the IA specialized. I know the special ed program takes more money than a lot of the other programs, but I think real consideration needs to be done here, and I believe you are trying to do this, but again, it's not 12 people. You know, it could be 16, it could be 25 people when you're looking at this. 12 FTE, not one of those people work full time. Some are 6.5 hours, some are 6, some are 5. So you have to look at that. Same thing with all of these positions. That's really all I want to say. I've been here, done that. I know every few years we have a financial crisis, but I think a little more consideration needs to go into this before a resolution is passed tonight, at least on some of these positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Okay. So that brings us to 3.1. We have public comment. I have 2 cards. So first, can I call Samantha Leong, Mina Chow, Darian Liu, and Luke Lee? Sorry if I didn't get any of the names correct.
Okay, line up in order. Hi, my name is Alan Lee, and I am the president of CLIPCO, the PTO for the CLIP program at Meyerholtz and Miller. It is my proud duty to introduce Samantha, Mina, Darian, and Luke, 8th graders at Miller.
Hello, Cupertino Union School District Board Trustees, Dr. Baker, and executive staff. We are 8th graders from the Cupertino Language Immersion Program, more commonly known as CLIP.
各位长辈晚安，我们几个是 CLIP 8年级的学生。
In CLIP, we learn both English and Mandarin throughout the whole school day. Additionally, we learn our history classes in Mandarin, further increasing our Mandarin vocabulary and application.
在 CLIP 这个双语课程中，我们一边学英文，一边学中文。我们用中文上语言课，也用中文学习历史。CLIP 的课程帮助我们增加中文词汇，加强中文词语的应用能力。
This year, CLIP is in its 21st year. We would like to commemorate this and the achievements of the 5th and 8th graders through a graduation ceremony for CLIP students.
今年是 CLIP 的第21年，毕业典礼是庆祝的时刻。我们庆祝 CLIP 8年级和5年级学生的学习成果。我们也在这个时候跟一个段落说再见，准备向下一个阶段前进。
It is also an opportunity to bring the CLIP community together again. There will be slideshows by both parents and students, live student performances, student artwork, and more.
我们的毕业典礼也是一个让 CLIP 社区更亲近的一个好机会。在典礼上会有学生和家长做的影片，有学生们的现场表演、艺术作品的展示等等。
One of the main highlights of this event is the presentation of CLIP graduation plaques to each 8th grade student, celebrating the completion of 9 years of bilingual education in CUSD. After the ceremony, there will be cake served in the quad, along with music, dancing, photo booths, traditional lion dance, a scavenger hunt, and more.
在典礼上，8年级学生得到 CLIP 的毕业证书，庆祝 CLIP 9年的学习历程。典礼之后会有蛋糕、有音乐、有拍照、有寻宝游戏，还有醒狮队的表演。这会是个充满欢乐的庆祝会。
To thank you for all you've done in support of the CLIP program, we would like to invite you to come join us at the graduation ceremony. The ceremony will take place at the Miller Gymnasium on May 31st at 5:30 p.m.
感谢您对 CLIP 的支持，请来参加我们的毕业典礼。毕业典礼在 Miller 的体育馆里举行，时间是5月31日下午5点半。您的光临会是我们莫大的荣幸。谢谢大家。Thanks everyone.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We hope you can come.
Okay. Thank you.
谢谢。
Should I do them in the order I got them, though? Yeah, okay. So next we have Tony Guan. Again, my apologies if I'm not getting the names quite right.
He's not here. He actually had
Oh.
to pick up his daughter, so I'll probably help him.
Okay.
My name's James. I'm also the...
Yep.
Everyone.
Yeah. Hi, James. So, sorry, I was supposed to remind everybody at the beginning, so we have a 3-minute limit on public comment. So please, you can have Tony's time. That's
yeah,
fine.
so
Thank
I think
you.
Tony, he actually, this is for the lunch program for the CUSD. He actually set up a Chinese survey about the about 9 days ago, and we got 275 responses. And this is all about the lunch program. So overall, the students or the parents are not too satisfied with the lunch program right now, carrying on this CUSD. I believe everybody has a copy of the PDF, including the survey. So I just do some. I was trying to do some summary. In 1 week, about 25% of them are not buying because of the quality or the service quality. 30% only ordering 1 or 2 days of the week. And the lunch quality, in terms of lunch quality, 21% thinks that they're super bad. 40% think they're bad. And lunch serving quality-wise, 10% I think they're bad, and 28% I think they're very bad. So lunch amount-wise, 37% think they're not enough, 38% think they're okay. So I think overall the comments are they're not healthy, waiting in a long line, hot food are actually cold. Actually, my daughter thinks sometimes the pizza is supposed to be the best for the kids. They don't like it anymore because it's always soggy. And there are lots of supposed to be very nice food that appeal to the kids. They're actually not in very good quality. And sometimes they found the veggie food that are circulated, they've been used the next day. And sometimes the milk are actually spoiled. So this is actually, I heard from my daughter. She's in the 4th grade in West Valley. And lack of choices, or sometimes the hot food is actually cold, and sometimes purely just tastes bad. But actually, that's probably people by people. Everybody has their own choices. But overall, I think we should have a way to measure it, or have the staff or the teacher try to taste the lunch that the student has at least once a week or twice a week to experience the same that student also have. I think that's not the practice right now. So I think that would be a good way to measure and to experience what the student has to experience as well. That's all.
All right. Thank you, James. And can you stop by Renee and make sure she has your name correctly as you exit? Thank you so much. All right. So one more blue card. I have Marissa Kakmarski. Did you want to speak now or with the item? With the item. Okay. Yep. Okay, so moving on to consent, I need a motion and a second for 4.1, the warrant and POs for Apple.
I move to approve item 4.1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And I abstain. So now I need a motion for 4.2 through 4.5, and then again 4.7 through 4.12. We pushed 4.6 to later in the agenda, so I need a motion 4.2 to 4.5 and 4.7 to 4.12.
The motion for consent, 4.2 to 4.5 and 4.7 to 4.12.
Second?
Second the motion.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. 4-0. Thank you. So moving on to 5.1, accepting the quarterly on Williams.
So usually we don't discuss those. There were 0 complaints. It's just a requirement that we bring these for you to see, and there's nothing you need to vote on, but just we present it to you as information.
Great. I think we accept your report.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on, 6.1, our program update on student nutrition and proposed paid lunch price increase. So it looks like we have Nicole with us. And Divya, thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to start us off tonight and then turn it over to Nicole and Divya. But we wanted to start off by thanking the entire board for joining us at the Central Kitchen and being able to take you through it. That was actually the first time any of our school board has gone, I believe, in at least the last 5 years, maybe a little bit beyond that. So we do thank you for that. We know one of the things that we are planning to work on after we get done with our 2 presentations to the board is to, in May, share with our community some of what you had the opportunity to see as a board going through that walk, because we do feel that part of the challenge that we've had in the district is just sharing the story of what is the requirements in the kitchen, which you will learn more about tonight, the type of food that is prepped for the students, and then how changes are made to the kitchen. So that will be hit on tonight by Divya and Nicole, and we will also be sharing that with the community in an update in May. So with that, I'll turn over to Nicole.
It's okay, Stacy, you could eat those. I brought them for you. Made sure the basket went right in front of you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Meske. I'm the Director of Student Nutrition Services for Cupertino Union School District. This is Divya.
I'm Divya, the Supervisor for Nutrition Services.
Thanks for having us tonight. Each year we like to check in with you once a year, kind of give you a program update, let you know some of the things that we've been doing and some of the goals we have for next year. So we appreciate your time, and I just want to echo what Jeff said. Thank you for making the Central Kitchen Open House work in your schedule. I know it was difficult, but we were able to get everybody there, and we had a really good time, and I think it was very informative. So thanks for coming. Okay, so we wanted to start tonight just kind of with what our department vision is. So our vision is to provide nutritious meals that kids love for all students within CUSD. And then some of the things we want to cover tonight would be, letting you know our program update and what is in a school lunch, and also what are the reasons behind asking for the price increase, and what our current challenges are. So some information about our department. We have 55 employees made up of cafeteria assistants, supervisors, warehouse delivery, and office support. We service 25 school sites, 1 outside preschool, and we also provide district catering. Currently, our budget for the 2018-19 school year is around $4.1 million in expenses, and we're currently a self-sufficient program, meaning we need no contribution from the general fund in order to run our program. So I just wanted to take a minute right here to answer a couple of questions that were presented from some board members regarding some of the numbers of how our budget is made up. So I have a lot of papers here. Where did I put it? And I think I left it on my desk. I apologize. So I can forward that information to you about the percentage of free and reduced students that are currently being served, and around what our percentage in revenue is. So there was a question around food costs and how much of our budget goes towards food costs. So currently right now, 55.8% of our revenue goes towards salaries for employees, and 35.5% of our revenue goes towards food cost. And the standard for the industry is usually around 40% for food costs, so we're actually under it. I did some comparison of districts in Santa Clara County, and we're actually right in average with all of the other districts here in the county. Here's some information about the meals that we served last year. You can see our mashed potato bowl here from Kennedy Middle School. At 5 of our middle schools, we served breakfast, and 4 of our elementary schools. Last year, we served over 100,000 breakfast, 800,000 lunches, and we sold $908,000 in a la carte sales. Oops. So as you guys saw when you visited the Central Kitchen, we provide meals from that kitchen for 20 of our elementary schools. It's about 3,400 lunches that get packed and prepared out of that kitchen each day, and about 190 breakfasts. Here's a picture of our supervisor at Kennedy making spaghetti and meatballs. Each of the middle schools has a self-production kitchen. They produce their own meals there. They produce about 1,400 lunches per day over the 5 middle schools, and almost 500 breakfasts. Divya's going to share a little bit now.
Thanks, Nicole. So how do we decide how much to portion, how many calories to offer, what kind of grains to offer the kids? So we are part of the National School Lunch Program, which is a federally assisted program. We have very strict USDA regulations that we adhere to. So if you see in the slide, we have requirements for calories, fat, trans fats, sodium. We have regulations for the amount of meat we can offer, the amount of grains we can offer, the fruit and vegetables as well. Sorry. Okay, so apart from the calories, the fat, the how much of all that, we also have requirements for the type of meal component we can offer. For example, if you look at the slide, for milk, we can only offer non-fat or 1% milk. For grains, we are 50% whole grain rich items are what we offer. For the vegetables, USDA wanted to ensure that kids get enough vitamins and minerals, so they decided to divide the vegetables into 5 subgroups. So if you look here, we have dark green, which could be romaine lettuce, broccoli, or spinach. We have red orange, or carrots. We have legumes, which could be edamame, starchy, which could be corn or potatoes, and other vegetables, which could be the celery or cucumbers. So we are required to offer all these subgroups over the course of a week. Sorry, I should have practiced. That's my laptop, sorry. So what makes up for a lunch? Our current price for elementary and middle school is $3.25. In that price, a child gets to have a choice of an entree. At middle schools, we have 7 to 8 entree choices. Elementary school, we have a regular and vegetarian choice available every single day. They also get to choose a fruit, a vegetable, and they also have a choice of milk. Thank you.
Okay, on to the price increase. So our current lunch price is $3.25 at both the elementary and the middle school level. We're proposing an increase that's up for discussion tonight of a 25-cent increase up to $3.50 for the 2019-20 school year. The last increase to lunch prices was 2017-18, so we did not have an increase the last year. And our current price for breakfast is $2.25 at both the elementary and the middle school. And we're proposing that also a quarter increase up to $2.50. That price hasn't been increased since 2008, 2009. So some of the reasons why we're looking at needing a price increase. Always increasing food prices and requirements. We have lots of rules from the federal, state, and local government, as Divya showed you, and meeting those requirements. Weather affects the food pricing, good and bad. And gas also increases our food pricing and also our expenses to our department. Minimum wage in California has been going up. We have a high minimum wage here in this area, but it is affecting the companies that we purchase food from, as they're now having to pay their drivers more money, their staff more money, which is then increasing our food cost. District compensation settlements. We had a settlement last year that impacted our department, since we are currently solely funded by our revenue that we collect. Any district compensation would have to be made up in revenue from the department in order to stay in that situation. And of course, the ever-increasing costs of PERS and the PERS contribution. So some of the challenges that we face as a department is staying self-supporting, right? Being able to continue to increase our revenue to cover those increasing costs that we talked about. And we're really struggling with the lack of substitutes right now. I think the economy is better, more people are working, they're working in longer hour jobs. So we're really having a hard time finding people to come and work in our department, for 3 or 4 hours to help us, serve lunch each day. Which is impactful, because that means that Divya is out there serving lunch, and then I will be out there serving lunch if there's more than one more person out. So one of the other challenges we have is our central kitchen, our warehouse facilities, and you got to see the central kitchen and the facilities there. So we have limited storage space, so pretty much everything that we have there turns around and goes right back out the next week. We have a limited food prep area. Some of our schools, like Miller and Kennedy, have not been modernized during the modernization, and we're working in very, very old kitchens. Central Kitchen particularly is, an aging facility. and aging equipment. So currently the food service budget covers any repairs that equipment needs and also to replace equipment. So if a refrigerator goes down at Lincoln, then we would have to purchase that out of the food service budget in order to replace or to repair it. And really our ongoing challenge, and I think we heard some of it tonight, balancing, parent expectation versus kid reality, right? So kids are consumers when they're alone at school making choices. We brought you some baskets today, help yourself. These are some of the fruits and vegetables that we serve every day in the cafeteria that we've collected the last couple of days. So please, Stacy, get your apples and your tangerine. So really that balance, our menu changes a lot because we care about what kids want to eat, and we're constantly out there looking to see what kids are eating, what's popular, what's not popular. We don't want to serve food that kids don't want to eat. So that's really our goal. Some of the challenges that we see, directly at school sites, again, the facilities, small elementary kitchens, right? We have no cafeterias, so everything that we do is located outside and has to be covered. So that's always a challenge. And like I said, the older middle school kitchens, limited service areas. So like we said, at the elementary schools are outside of the building. Miller and Hyde, they actually serve in their gym. So they're finishing PE right when kids are trying to come in and get their lunch. And long lines, right? We hear lots of stories about long lines. And a lot of that is just limited areas of point of service that we can, get kids through. And one of our biggest challenges is time, serving, eating, and playing, right? So kids have a small amount of time to eat and play, and sometimes they're making choices. I'd rather play than sit down and chew all of this fruit and vegetable or salad that I picked up. And then they suffer the consequences for that later when they go back to the classroom and they're hungry. So there's not a lot of time to do all that. Some of our goals for next year is, Jeff kind of talked about this, is working on our marketing. I think this is one thing that we definitely need to improve on. We don't do a lot of telling people what we're doing, right? We do a lot of the work, but not a lot of the telling of the work that we're doing. So this is a goal for us for next year. We're going to be working on, doing the Central Kitchen Tour video so that more people can see it. We're going to try to be taking pictures of our lunches and posting them on the website so parents and kids can see that at home. And back to school nights. So Divya actually went to all 5 back to school nights at the middle schools, and this is a picture from one of them. And she presented to parents as they were walking into back to school night. Did you know these are the things we serve in the cafeteria? Most of the responses was, I had no idea. So we thought that was very effective. And then trying to have a social media presence. One of our goals is always increasing participation, and hopefully, the marketing will help that. And looking at additional points of sale at the middle school and how we can strategically place ourselves on campus where kids are. I think of Hyde particularly. Hyde's cafeteria is right on the street by the very front of the school. Most of the kids are in the middle of the school in that brand new lovely quad area that they built them, so they really have to hike all the way over and be purposeful about coming to lunch. So trying to go where the kids are. So here's our contact information. We really encourage you, reach out to us if you have any questions or want to know more information. We're happy to answer all of those things for you.
And I think the one thing to leave you with as a board to discuss is just what type of role we want to play as a district with supporting really the student nutrition as a whole and our students during the day, because as Nicole hit on, they don't hit our general fund. And they are self-sufficient, but at the same time, it might be a direction we want to go to consider their facilities, to consider doing more for the central kitchen than what we currently do, and what that would look like, whether it's equipment or trucks and so forth. So I know we had a chance to talk about the facility, but I also want to leave that as an additional thought for you guys tonight. So thank you.
We'll take any questions if there's questions.
Okay, so who wants to kick us off? Jerry? Okay, go.
Sure. So Nicole, Divya, first of all, I want to thank you for the gift basket, for the very concise presentation, and for hosting us a couple of weeks ago. I think it was very eye-opening for me to see sort of the, how it all worked behind the scenes, and it was very helpful. We tend to rotate questions, and so I have some, but I'll stay on finances on this. I have a couple of questions around finances. So the federal reimbursement right now, my understanding is around $333 per lunch. Do you have information on what you expect would there likely to be an increase in the federal reimbursement rate? And then related to that is through this raising the prices of 25 cents, how much additional revenue are we projecting bringing in addition to the 4.1 million that's there today?
Sure. So the government usually raises the reimbursement rate about a penny every year.
All right. 334. All right.
Yes. So currently, right now, the federal reimbursement rate for a free breakfast, a student that qualifies for free, is $1.79. We get that from the federal government. We get about 23 cents from the state, and then obviously the student doesn't contribute anything. So for a paid breakfast, we get 31 cents from the federal government, nothing from the state, and then the $2.25 or potentially the $2.50 from the student. So raising the price of breakfast would increase our revenue about $19,000 just for the breakfast price increase. So currently for a free meal, the federal government gives us for a lunch $3.37. The state gives us 23 cents, and obviously the student pays us nothing. A paid lunch, the federal government gives us 37 cents. The state gives us nothing. And the student gives us $3.25, so potentially $3.50 if we raised the price. The price increase for lunch potentially could have an increase in revenue about $170,000.
Okay, so 19K and then 170.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you done with your finance questions, or do you want to
I'll
pass? Okay, who wants to go next?
Okay, thanks Nicole and Divya. It was a really great experience visiting the facility, and thank you for taking us there. Okay. I have a general question, like, I think the feedback mechanism, like, I know, like, we discussed a little bit when I was there as well, like, but I think for everybody's interest also, like, what kind of, like, feedback mechanism if a parent has,
Sure.
like, about a question or a suggestion or concerns or anything?
Answer that. You took one of those questions today, didn't you?
We're very, very open to feedback. We actually want parents to call us so we know what the expectation is. Good or bad. Parents typically call for bad, not for good. But we are very open to feedback. We actually, reach out to the parent. It could be concerns about somebody using somebody's account, some kind of food concerns, any allergies. I personally actually try to dig out the number of the parent and call them and, leave a voicemail or talk to them and say, call us anytime. We're here. I mean, that's our job, to serve the kids, so we're very open.
Thank you. Sylvia, you can.
So my question was related to the finance, because I had a similar question, or it's the same question, but just kind of following up with that. So if it's 170K plus 19K increase, so that differential of increase is mostly just to cover the increase in costs that you have, right? So it wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't be enough to change.
No.
Okay.
Exactly.
And is that how that amount got determined? You were just trying to keep it at the same level, like the minimum amount of increase to keep everything the same?
And also what the market would bear, right? How much can we raise the price without losing customers? And so we do round everything to a quarter. So, right. And that's kind of how we've adjusted it before. It's pretty typical of school districts to do it in quarter amounts too.
I'm going to slide in with one because it's a follow-on to yours. So if I do the math on our employees didn't have an increase for a period of time and then did, and when we did, it was retroactive back to 7%. So if I do the math on your $3.25 lunch, that 7% is 22 cents of your 25-cent increase. So we're talking 3 cents to do everything else that was in the list of things that increase is going to. Am I understanding that right? Okay.
And in a food service budget, we really do talk in pennies. Pennies are a huge deal to us.
Yeah, but we're literally talking about 3 cents left over after that to do all the other things on that list. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll go next. So I want to talk a bit about snack sales. Can you talk a bit about the kind of food that we sell there, and what's the markup and what's the profit, I guess, out of that 910? If you could comment a bit on that.
And I do have the answers to some of the questions from earlier that I couldn't find, so maybe I could read those first and then see if that helps also. So just looking at our total revenue of $4.2 million and how much of it is in federal reimbursement, about 16% of that money is in federal money, 0.8% is state reimbursement, About 22% is in a la carte sales. And then we have some interest in some other local revenue. So that's kind of the breakdown of how the revenue works out, the $4 million. As far as our expenses go, $4 million, this was for the 17-18 school year. 33% of our budget, of our revenue last year went to food, purchasing food. 52% of our budget last year went to people, paying people and benefits. 7% for other things like repairs and equipment replacement. And then 4% we do pay indirect costs to the district, and that was 4% of our revenue last year. And when we do look at a la carte sales, we take the cost and we double it. There is a lot of laws around how we operate a food service budget, and so they want to make sure that we're not underpricing ourselves, so we do have to show that in our audits, but we look at the cost of the item and we double the cost is how we figure that out.
And do you have any restrictions on in terms of the nutritional requirements that are sold a la carte?
I should have added that slide too, but we have a whole list of regulations from the federal and the state of California as to what we can sell and what we cannot. Our snacks are limited to 200 or 250 calories. I do not remember off my head, but there's limitations for what can be offered to the kids and what cannot be. Any kind of chips that we offer are low sodium, they're fully baked, there's no fried. Any kind of sweet or dessert items are whole grain, low sugar. We're not offering anything that probably a wholesale store or a grocery store offers. These are specially customized for the kids when they come to the line.
Thank you.
So Satish, Sylvia, okay.
I had a question and I lost it, so come back to me.
Even I lost, but enough of money, right? So let me talk something else.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
so I think sharing. I'm again back to the community part of it, right? So the feedback and the sharing information or making it more black and white or more, I think this definitely it could be a suggestion also. What I'm saying, or a comment rather. I think we should find ways and means to I think one of the slides you said that Divya went there for one of the open houses, and many of the parents do not know what they're, what were given. So I think some ways and means we should find out, good or bad, let people know what it is, right? So I want a honest feedback from people rather than going with a lot of perceptions. So I think we should find some ways to get it genuinely shared, these things.
I agree.
Okay, Sylvia.
So did you, you said you found some of the numbers. Did you get that free and reduced number?
Yes, I did. Would you like that?
Would love that,
Sure.
yeah.
Okay, so currently I looked at the percent of kids that are eligible for free or reduced lunch and the participation rate. So for lunch right now, we currently serve about 52% of our free kids that qualify for free. About 48% of our reduced kids that qualify are participating in lunch program. And about 23% of our paid students are participating, for an average of 25%. And in a very low free and reduced district, that's about average, about a quarter of the kids participate.
So the 52% of the eligible children, 52% of that subset are the ones that participate. Is there a number attached?
So there's on the average, eligible 898 kids, and we serve about 465 of those kids each day. And that's just lunch.
Free.
It's just lunch in the free. Yes.
And then for the reduced?
252 kids eligible. 120 kids served.
Can I just chime in for a second? I think what we can do as a follow-up is take all sorts of data that might have been included that weren't, and we can actually put them on the website, make sure you have it. And so maybe instead of us, unless it's something compelling that you're really needing to know right now to understand in order to have a conversation, I'm thinking maybe we can just, after this, follow up and have those data for everybody. But if you have something in order to discuss something now, you should definitely ask that.
Go ahead, and then I'll.
I mean, the reason why I'm asking is I'm just trying to understand, because we've gotten a lot of parent feedback about prices, and some parents are like, it needs to be, raise the prices, and other parents are like, no, don't raise the prices. And so when I see those comments, I think my mind goes towards the students that, have the free or reduced lunch needs. And so I just wanted to kind of get an understanding of what kind of percentage that is within our community.
When we talk about raising the price on our reduced lunch, do we raise the price? Our reduced price stays the same.
The federal government only allows you to charge 40 cents. So a
Okay.
reduced student's portion is 40 cents. We're not allowed to charge
Even
more.
with this increase?
Yeah.
Okay.
That there will be no effect to the reduced.
And I just wanted to clarify, because it will be a point that I want to discuss with my colleagues on. When you talked about the total percentage of your budget that went to, I don't remember what you called it, facilities, mechanical repair last year, was that 7%?
Yeah, all that was all other. So our office supplies, repairs, purchase of equipment, paper supplies, napkins, any of the additional things that we need that is not food to serve lunch, about 7%.
Do you have a sense of what of that is repairs right now for
I don't, but
aging?
I could get that information
Okay,
for you.
for aging,
Yeah.
sort of, infrastructure is the wrong word, but, okay. Anybody else? Go.
Right. Just one more money question, and then I'll. So you talked about the it's self-supporting. So I just want to make sure this also includes capital equipment acquisition, then, whatever machinery you buy. So the only thing you really get from the district is space. Other than that, okay. And then I want to talk a bit about the serving line experience. Is that within the control of the individual site principals, or is that a student nutrition services policy in terms of, it seems like at the schools I visited, some serve lunch in 2 shifts, some serve them in 1. Is that, how is that policy developed?
So it depends on the school, depends on the bell schedule, depends on how many kids go to school there and what fits the schedule. We were just talking with the principal today about how to better serve her kids at her school and what might work for her bell schedule for next year. So it's definitely on a school-to-school basis, and then we accommodate as much as we can to fit into whatever the school needs to get that to work.
So the school specifies obviously the bell schedule, and then you work with the principal, but the principal decides that at the end of the day, or is that you and Divya?
We don't decide the bell schedule, no.
No, but the way the lunch is served, how many lines, how many shifts.
We usually decide that. We work in collaboration with the principal to make sure how it impacts their site. But we normally are able to know how many people it's going to take to serve, where is the best place to serve, what infrastructure is there, what do we need to get there, and we work together with the principal.
I see. All right, thank you.
If I may just add on to that, there's a lot of discretion that we do try and provide to a school site and choices around it, because principals do know their site far better than we will at the district side. And so some of the practice, a location of a cart, something like that, that is driven by the school. What we try and do is support it. So if it's an additional cart that's needed, if it's a better location for it. But all the bell schedules are actually come through, a principal every year gets their current schedule. They submit it to the business services department. We check to make sure that we're meeting the instructional minutes for the year. If there was a recommended change for the schedule, it actually goes back to executive cabinet to take a look at. For example, last year there's some conversation around Lincoln, so it's good to answer here today. There's some discussion around with everything going on in the Monte Vista area when the high schools changed times. That was brought back through EC and to the board through an update.
Thank you.
Follow up for that question though. So in terms of it being from site to site, I did notice like some elementary schools, they just have the hot lunch. And then some elementary schools have like snack sales during recess. Is that also like a principal decision, or how does that decision get made?
So it's breakfast during recess at 4 of the elementary schools. And normally, we've had 3 sites, DeVargas, Eisenhower, and Nimitz are higher free and reduced sites with our needier kids that have had breakfast at recess, morning recess. And then Stockholmeyer actually was a collaboration with the principal, showing concerns about some kids coming to school that were hungry. And she came to us and said, what could we do? So we did a pilot to see how it would work there, whether or not it would be feasible. Would we have enough kids to participate? Is it meeting the need that she saw? And then we came together and made a decision and said, we can fiscally support this. We'd like to, implement it permanently.
So we do have a public comment, but I want to get through all our clarifying questions first before we take the public comment, and then we can have our discussion together. So any other?
The last one.
Okay, go ahead.
Is there any ceiling on this price hike, like price increase? Any like a state mandate or anything like that? You cannot go, or no?
Can I just get
Yeah,
one more?
absolutely.
Thanks.
Yes, no, it's important to get the questions answered.
Right.
So.
So I'm looking at the final thoughts here, right? And so right now we have board policy that says the nutrition services has to be self-supporting. What that says up there is basically, I think there's a message there. I was wondering, Nicole or Divya or Jeff, if you'd like to say a little bit more. Are you looking into the future? Are you thinking, because given how small these price increases are, I mean, with this increase, you're looking at a 4.6% bump in revenue. That doesn't seem enough to keep up with inflation and maintain facilities. So I just want to see if there's a message behind these final thoughts here. You can make it a little bit more explicit.
I think there's always a message. There is not a board policy that says we cannot use general fund dollars to support the kitchen. So I do want to make sure I'm
well,
clear
I thought
on that.
there was one that said it needs to be self-supporting.
We are self-supporting.
Right,
Most
right.
school districts in the area are not.
Right. But right now we have a board policy that says it should be self-supporting.
It tries to be self-supporting as much, and Nicole has done such a great job over the years that it is self-supporting, but it doesn't.
There's a technicality here. So there's big P policy and then there's little p. So yes, I believe that there was a statement made at some point that the board expectation was that we would be self-funding, that was the goal, that's what we're doing. That's different from an actual policy, though.
I understand. I was referring to big P.
Direction.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. So it was direction that was given. Okay.
Direction's a good word for it. In terms of the facilities, I think it's not that there's a hidden message. It's more of a discussion of where we're at. If we are okay with using dollars to support the program, if that's where the current place of the board is, then I think it's important for us to know that. It doesn't mean that we can all of a sudden turn around tomorrow and build a new central kitchen. It doesn't quite work that way.
Sure.
But to get that guidance from you guys in the direction our planning going forward, later on the agenda, we are bringing to you with Travis about the facilities master plan. Is this something we should consider? Is this a direction we should consider that we want to go there because we want to improve what we're able to serve at the central kitchen or even at our school sites? Is it important for our modernization projects to include work for our kitchens? We have 2 middle schools most likely that would potentially be in a facility master plan, and probably all 25 schools that we have across the district have various needs right now. Where does this fall into the grand scheme of what we could potentially either go out for with the bond or some other measure, or even the state matching with our bond dollars that we receive back?
Thank you, Jeff.
Just to follow up really quick, when I mentioned I checked around in Santa Clara County School District's budgets, and just to see the two sides of us, Santa Clara Unified General Fund gives their food service program $800,000 a year in order to break even. Fremont Union High School District gives their district their food service program from their general fund $1.2 million.
I'll state the obvious: basic aid. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions on the presentation before I take the public comment? Okay. Can I invite Feng Yi to the podium? So Feng, same as earlier, I'm not sure if you were here, but we have 3 minutes for public comment.
Start right now?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So I have been speak a few times in Cupertino City Council and Fremont High School University. So this is my first time here because I think we had a very good board last time, and I think you guys are also very, very good. So anyway, so I think lunch has lots of issues. I want to dive into a specific one. I think there will be a presentation later on. But I'm here especially speak for my daughter who is choose to be a vegetarian. You know how hard it is for me, right? So when she become a vegetarian, I mean, she's the only one. So she lost lots of her choices. So I just want to focus on that. So for vegetarians, they cannot go eat the meat, right, portion. So for other kids, they can go back eat the vegetarian food if that's good. So that happened, a few times, and my daughter at least had 2 times. When she was in the line and when she's there, her favorite choice is gone. So he chose to stay hungry instead of going for the other choice. So I emailed back and forth with Lawson Kitchen, a lady called Barbara. She's very responsive, very helpful, and she helped me clarify a lot of things about the salad bar. So the salad bar actually is another thing that shifted to lots of items to salad bar. So my daughter used to take a shorter line. Now it's a longer line. But I think that's fine because overall you get shorter time for other lines. But the problem is that in the salad bar, they don't have lots of options. So whenever the veggie items they run out, they need to go get from the main line. And the problem is that now the policy is to run out of all of the veggie item, and then they will go to the main line to grab it. But I asked her if she can do if you run out of any veggie item, then you can go grab, or you can adjust the items, the number of items, right? You can count what are the most favorite items and just stock them a little bit more. I never got a concrete answer back. So that's something I want to stress here. So my other idea is that maybe you can consider using a snack machine. I don't know if you guys have talked about this before, but the auto vendor machine that put in the stack and snack so that people still can buy by themselves. So that will shorten the line. And also I would like to see some of the school allows outside vendor to put in food, right? But Lawson does not allow that. So I just wondered why. I mean, I don't speak for my daughter for this item because she won't eat outside. But I think at least they can help to reduce the lunch line, right? If you can 10, 20 people eat from the outside vendor, then you get 10, 20 people less in the line. So in general, I think, so in my final comment in general, I think I got an email saying that a survey of tax increase for school, I'm all for it. And if you guys talk about pricing increase, I'm all for it. So yeah, do whatever we can to support the school district.
Thank you, Feng. Okay. So shall I just open it up for discussion? Does anybody want to jump in on anything specific?
I'll go ahead and start. It's something I've given a lot of thought to. So I want to acknowledge again, I think the incredible job Nicole and Divya are doing. I think if you look at and I'm going to state my understanding of the situation. If it's not correct, I would ask staff to correct me. But it seems like you're operating with a lot of constraints, right? So there are these because we're part of the lunch program, there are federal guidelines on what to serve, right? I talked to a lot of kids who rather have water than milk, but I guess you can't do that because milk is part of what needs to be there. We have EDCO, we have these facility issues, we have, we're trying to make it the self-supporting. And that seems to me, so it's pretty amazing, right? The lunch to the breakfast, I didn't realize that the price hadn't been increased since 2008. I don't think anything hasn't been increased since 2008. This is incredible. And so what I feel like what we've end up with, though, with all these constraints is that after fulfilling all these requirements, we're basically trying to hit the lowest cost point, right? We're trying to make it as affordable as possible, which is why you're here asking for a minute, 25 cents. And then I think then we have a system where I think if we were to design a system from scratch, I don't think we would design it this way, right? Because so like a year ago, there was a board presentation. There were some kids from Nimitz, right, that talked about their lunch, and they concluded their presentation with, well, we invite the board to come eat here, and I actually took them up on this offer this past Monday, and I spoke to a bunch of kids. Lots of it's incredible how insightful they are about things. They know what's possible, and what I got out of, I guess, is I feel like there's right now we're sort of at a particular, if you look at a sort of a price performance ratio sort of thing, we're at a particular point of lowest cost, and I would be willing to entertain basically maybe exploration with the community to see if there are other points in this sort of price performance curve that we can explore. Because Nicole and Divya up here and asking for a 25-cent increase, and I have mixed feelings about it because I don't think they should be here asking for 25 cents. I think they should be up here asking for $2, right? But then that takes us into a new territory. You don't know what that does to the demand. And I think my suspicion is this is a structural thing where it's going to be, we probably have to move a couple of pieces and think about how we do things. So I support very much what they're doing. I like to get them more resources beyond a sort of a, $170,000 because anyway, so I'll just stop for now and I'll sort of maybe hear from my colleagues here. Thank you.
Else?
No. Great.
So, I mean, I want to echo some of what Jerry said in terms of going to Central Kitchen and really being wowed by the operations there and not ever knowing that it was, whole grains and like low sugar and all these things. So my own understanding of the lunches has been limited because my kids make their own lunch. But when they were in the elementary age, they actually got to choose once a week, so that was like their prize. They got to circle, and there's always pizza that they circled, that they got to go once a week to go for it. And so from my limited experience, I haven't gotten, so the feedback from the parents who have, sent in comments, I think has been really insightful as well to kind of see what's going on. I think what it means to me is that there needs to be a larger discussion, and I agree, like the 25 cents to me just seems so, like, what can you do with that? But I feel like it's two different issues, right? One is just about the price increase to help sustain operations of what we have going on, and another one is a bigger issue question. And so I don't know that we want to get into both of those today, because I know we want to at least get some decisions made about the specific request today.
So yeah, I just also want to echo, how much I learned at the Central Kitchen tour, and as well just the energy and skill that went into designing that system over there. It is truly amazing what you do with the limited space and equipment that you have. I think that one of the things that really struck me, as I look at sort of the big picture equity piece across the district, is that we do have big discrepancies in our facilities across the district still that, I definitely think, to Jeff's point, as we look at the facilities master planning that we're coming up to, I would like to see us make that a priority to look seriously at in supporting our nutrition programs. But I also think there's this piece there of what else it takes from an infrastructure piece to make student nutrition happen across the district. The equipment that's being used in a lot of cases is so old that there's trouble, I understand, even finding a tech who is skilled enough to work on it and to get parts. We're dealing with situations where the trucks are, so old that it's, if one goes out, it's more likely that one's going to go out because of the age. And when they do go out, then it's a scramble to even get the lunches to our campuses, which then becomes a, all hands on deck priority. So I think we have some wider issues that, I would definitely like to see us dig into. I agree with Sylvia that I think it's kind of two separate issues. One is, I think we do need to move forward and give the nutrition department the support they need with an increase now to, plan for next year's school lunch program, obviously. But I think we also do definitely have some other issues that I think we want to consider if we want to dig in on. And, I want to acknowledge that we did hear from, a group of concerned community members as well, with some information they're providing about where their thoughts and feelings are on what's happening with our school nutrition right now. And it seems to me, and I guess my question to staff would be, is there time in our timeline with like our facilities master plan discussion, as well as maybe not for this price increase discussion, but is there time in our timeline to look at maybe establishing a focus group where we can bring people together and to start to look at some of these things? Because it may be that improving facilities and putting money into our next bond may be the most strategic thing we can do, but it may be that there are other options with outsourcing which might be more economically feasible in part or in whole too. And I feel like I don't want to jump ahead in either direction without maybe pulling a group together to really dig deep on this. And is that an option?
Yeah, I would recommend that, actually. I think it's probably best to allow us to bring back next time for a decision on the 25-cent increase, and treat that separately from diving in, creating a group, a focus group, or a committee or something, a task force to start looking at options, various options. And and definitely we could include it in the facility master planning, which will be going on through next year as well. It's not going to be a quick, easy thing. So yeah, I think we can just make that a priority to do that, and that way we can start to work on it, but not slow down on providing them what they need most, critically.
So are you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sylvia.
So just to follow on with that, what you were saying made me think about just some of the comments about long lines, because it seems like it varies from site to site, and so I'm wondering, like, especially I think somebody said Kennedy and Miller, right, which don't have that, they're serving out of their gym. In the modernization cycle, are those two schools, did the modernization already happen there? And if not, is that going to help with the infrastructure of? Well,
correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but it seems to me that those things, probably we can just start working with the schools now and think about solutions. We don't have to wait on that, but that's an operational thing that we will do. That's different from needing the board to be involved in a conversation that has input in a way that thinks big picture, policy, procedure, budget. What do we think we need to do around the food, nutrition, student nutrition, big picture. That's what our job is. And I think in order to inform that conversation, it would be good to have a group of people doing research and bringing ideas, et cetera, and working on that. But we can do, as staff, we will follow up on areas that we think, anything that was brought up today that we can, or in this survey, we'll work on the things that we can work on.
And then I guess, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
My other question is, the parent had said, so certain schools, I guess you can't drop off lunch or something like that, or you can't bring in outside food. Was that, or maybe I misunderstood?
So we're not going to engage. We can't engage with community right now. Hold on a sec.
Sorry.
I just want to follow protocol here, right? So we're having a discussion, which means you guys talk to each other and with staff. So
I guess I'm just curious about that, because I don't think that's the case at every school, because I know parents are allowed to drop off.
So it's different when it's parents versus vendors, I think, is
okay.
the issue.
Then I think vendors are allowed to drop off at other middle schools.
I want to highly recommend that these questions, that kind of thing is a practical, in the weeds thing that my staff does, that our schools do. They work those things out. So if we can definitely look at questions of lines, drop off of food. Those are things that we talk about, we can talk about, and we will follow up on it. That's different from a board discussion, right? I'm just trying to keep us point of order, in what is it we should be discussing.
So I don't know if this question goes to you or to Nicole, but what kind of timeline are you on for needing to get the 25-cent increase put forward so that we can actually plan for next year? Is that
we'd bring that next time?
That would be next time.
Yeah.
Okay. So are we okay then maybe giving direction that, that will proceed, and maybe we'll put it back on discussion action just in case anybody has any more questions? We can do that.
I have a couple of things I'd like to add if we could do that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I like the idea of having a sort of a community. I think, Jeff, at some point you had mentioned doing a survey, and I think I started thinking about that. And I think, just picking up on some of the themes I've heard here, what Nicole said about marketing, I think there's a lot of information that I think we should communicate to the community about, what we can do, what we can't do, and what are hard limits and what are soft limits. And I think those are the kind of things that come out through some sort of a committee. So I want to read a support for getting people together as opposed to having some kind of survey. I also agree that this is a big picture thing. There's no way. There's too many moving pieces that, this is not something we would do at the board level. And so I think I'm comfortable with going forward with the requested price increase. But I guess I would ask that we make a firm commitment to have pull together a group of folks, and I would like to have, of course, staff and parents, but I'd like to see if we can include some students also. I actually had some, it's interesting when you're the ones going through that line and you're only this short or this tall, you kind of see the world differently, and I very much, so I'm hoping, and I know that we're going to be doing a facilities master plan. It's a good opportunity for us to look at, to address all these gaps that are currently in our school sites that I think is triggering, that's causing all this. So I leave it to, in your capable hands in terms of what that timeline looks like. I know we'll be looking at that later this evening, but I just like to get a sense from my colleagues here whether or not you would like to support basically directing staff to go ahead and commission some kind of a group to go off and look at all the different options, and then at some point come back to the board with recommendations.
I want to add something in that, right? I think it's a great point, but I think we should have some kind of a guideline here around that. What is the objective of that group, right? So a little bit, because I think I think fundamentally two things. I think they come here for certain things. That's why there's 25 cents, and that probably is not including a lot of feedback, whether it's the right feedback or wrong feedback, doesn't matter. So I think what is that? There should be a clear objective for what is that next step on that if you are looking for, because everybody can get a variety of feedback on this, right? It could be an operational issues and things like that, but I think let's be clear on that.
But it will come back to us. So if we give direction today to have kind of create two parallel tracks. One is to move forward the price increase so that our staff can plan for next year. One is to move forward with the idea of a committee, a task force, a focus group, and I think that would come back, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would come back as a separate discussion item for us where we would have a chance to give some more direction about what implementation of that would look like before it would move ahead.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So what I recommend is that you give us until probably the first meeting in May. We might have to do it. We might need a little bit more time for the second meeting in May with ideas about objectives of a group, some thoughts about makeup of that group, and what it might, just very broad frame, and then you can weigh in some more on it at that time, and that we would try to do that. I think we might be able to bring just ideas about that to the first meeting in May, and then we'll go from there.
So since Satish posed the question, if I could have just 2 minutes to share, what I would want out of this group and what is it, what's the function I'm optimizing for, right? Because we're here at the end of the day, it's about student learning and student achievement. And I think nutrition is linked to that. I have 2 kids in the district. They've come home from time to time because lunch didn't work out and all that. And I think, let's see, let me collect my thoughts here a bit. So I think there's 2 parts in student nutrition. There is actually fulfilling the requirement, making sure they have the veggies and the fruits and all that. But then it also has to be tasty so they'll actually eat it, right? So if we follow the letter of the law and we serve this and then they end up not eating it for whatever reason, I don't think we've been successful, even though we fulfill the federal requirements. And so for me, it's really trying to, however we measure that, increase that, some of the schools I visited, I guess the kids have to take a vegetable and they have to take a fruit and they turn around and dump it in the trash because they don't want to eat it, right? And talk to the kids about this, and so they wish the adults wouldn't make them take it. And I explained it's the federal government, and go talk to President Trump about this, right? It's not something I can do. But then they started talking about, it's an anecdotal, I'm sorry, I don't mean to get into the weeds, but I wanted to sort of illustrate a point here, is that they talk about, someone said it's like having a salad, right? And today they get a bunch of radishes, and tomorrow they get a bunch of cucumbers. And gosh, can you guys just put it together so I could have a complete salad or mix it into the entree? And I know those are things that are hard to do given our constraints because we don't have kitchens at these sites. And I think as we're potentially looking at a facilities master plan, if we go out, if there are opportunities to improve the facilities, I want to get that into the queue. So for me, it comes back to making the food more tasty so that more kids eat it, and we reduce the sort of the thrown away vegetables and the fruits into the trash. That would be one measure. So there could be others. You could optimize on price, you could optimize on convenience, on all sorts of other things. But I think a lot of it for me is just the kids wanting to eat the food that's there. All right.
So I hear all that. The one caution I would give on, I guess, what I would like to see us do if we're moving in the direction of giving guidance on what that committee would look like would be, I agree, everybody, part of that would be some sort of taste testing, but like, I have a picky eater. My picky eater doesn't eat fantastically wonderful, delicious food that I prepare for him. He's not going to eat it at school, and he's not going to eat it at home either. Right. So, I mean, I want to take that with a little bit of a...
Sure. It's always when you're dealing in masses, you're trying to hit the bulk, so not necessarily your kid's celery.
Yeah, I know.
So.
All right. Anybody else?
Are we good with that plan?
Sounds good.
Yep. Okay. All right. So let's see, where are we? We are to 6.2. Again, these are discussion only items. So first read of Board Policy 0410, non-discrimination in district programs and activities. It looks like it's Jeff.
It's not me. I'm just getting this. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Getting your presentation.
It could be just about anybody, I think. Yeah, normally we, Leslie probably leads these, but she is not here.
Yes, for our board policies, yes.
Yeah.
So good evening. I will try to be Leslie and the notes that she left me. So these were recommendations from CSBA looking at our policies. Most of them hadn't been updated for about 3 years, 4 years. And so periodically going through in the reviews, and these were the recommendations. So did provide them in red lines so that you could go back and see what the changes are and any comments, and we can go back and adjust before we bring them back for approval.
So these mostly just represent changes to the law that CSBA is recommending that we update the policy to reflect that.
Correct.
Yeah, they all are that, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions anybody has?
I do want to point out that, if I can, I did note there's several references in here to board policies we don't even have, so because they're generic, and that's what happens when you do use CSBA things, like it has career tech ed and adult education, and we don't have those policies. So we'll do some further cleaning up of some of those picayune things that we have to take care of.
Between the first and the second read. Okay. Yeah. Anybody have any questions on this one? So how would people feel about bringing it back? Could it be something that would come back as consent or action only?
It depends on if you feel like you want a second read and a conversation, or do you just feel like, yes, we could basically do this, make a few changes, show you what those are, and then vote on it.
Which I've gone through multiple times. I think that it's like...
So
I'm comfortable with it being on consent next time.
With it being on consent.
Okay, so why don't you bring it back to us on consent next time? Thank you. And then 6.3, Board Policy 5145.3, non-discrimination and harassment.
I think that's basically the same. It's
okay.
And they're somewhat related, you'll note. And these are all recommendations directly from CSBA.
Okay.
Just a question on this one. So, I mean, it looks reasonable to me. I'm just wondering. So we have this non-discriminatory harassment. Actually, never mind.
Non-discrimination in district program and activities.
Right, and so we define what discrimination is and the harassment. But is there a parallel one for harassment that's not discriminatory in nature? Say you just make fun of someone not because of any of these reasons. Do we have a board policy for that? I was just curious why we have one for harassment that's discriminatory based, but not one. Or is there one for just?
Student manual too.
Is it?
Sorry, hold on. Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. There are, as my recollection is, there are 5 or 6 different policies that in some way or other deal with non-discrimination, harassment, bullying in different forms. So, and in fact, some of the policies, if you look at the references, they say send you to those. So yes, it is kind of tough. Now the 0410 that we looked at is supposed to kind of be the overarching statement of we will not discriminate, basically, right? And then the rest have more detailed things specific to. I have to say it's a little tedious because the reality is you ought to be able to get these all into a policy. Or at least one philosophical one at the beginning, and then just have one more that says it doesn't matter if it's staff, it doesn't matter if it's about kids or anything. Here are the things we expect, and we will not tolerate any kind of harassment, discrimination, bullying, etc. Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, how do people feel about this one coming back for
As a consent? Yep.
That's fine.
Consent is fine.
That's
Okay,
fine.
so please bring it back on consent. Okay, 6.4 is the resolution 18-19-17, state funding applications beyond bond authority.
Good evening,
Hi,
members of the
Travis.
board, Dr. Baker, Executive Cabinet. My name is Travis Kirk. I'm Senior Director of Facility Operations. I'm pleased to present you this information item on a board resolution. As you may recall, we put in applications for state matching money on 10 of our modernization projects. 5 of those applications got on the workload list for Prop 51 funding on the modernization side to the tune of about a little over $6 million in state match that we will be receiving from proceeds of Prop 51, the statewide bond measure. Once those proceeds are exhausted, and they are now exhausted on both the workload list for new construction and modernization, the board is obligated to pass a resolution to say that we acknowledge that these funds from Prop 51 are encumbered, but we still want to get in line for future bond measures. Yesterday at the state level, Assembly Committee passed AB 48 on a 5-0 vote, which really just forwards a potential statewide bond for the primary in 2020 as well as the general election in 2022. So they're looking at 2 statewide bond measures. Currently polling is very high for these bond measures and has great support from both the legislature and the governor. So it behooves us to pass a resolution, get these other 5 applications on the list as high up as we can. It is kind of a first come, first served thing. We are ready to go with school facility consultants. This resolution can come back for approval at our next board meeting, and then our school facility consultants will immediately the next day submit the remaining 5 applications. Again, right around $6 million in total for those 5 applications. This resolution also carries forward to future projects that we may entertain. I know we have Blue Hills on the horizon, the potential for another bond measure coming up. So the resolution is just kind of a one-time deal that counts moving forward. Perhaps by the time we get the next bond measure passed, if indeed it passes and we get revenue from that, statewide bond may already be in place. We may get back to where it was in the early 2000s where you could put in for state match and receive it at the same time you're actually doing the project rather than it being a reimbursement. And with that, I'd happy to entertain any questions.
Anybody have any questions? So I have a comment. So when I was up at Sacramento last for the Legislative Action Day, our state reps, with Evan Lowe in particular, I think his interest was really piqued to hear that we had several $1 million worth of projects that were already in that encumbered amount in Prop 51, and the issue was whether or not the state was going to be releasing those funds at the trickle level, which is what they've been releasing them at, versus a larger lump sum. I think it would behoove us as we look at this to maybe do some sort of write-up that, and I'm happy to be the one to take it to them if that's the right thing to do, but to share with our local reps, like what passing, for example, this next bond and why they should vote for it and what that would mean locally here to our schools, because I think they like real numbers and they like knowing that they're affecting their constituency positively. And so, I'd like to see us do that, come up with something that we can share directly with them and say, this is why it matters to your schools and your district. Because I think that only helps us build momentum for getting those things passed through committee, through the legislature, and then onto the ballot. Anybody else have anything else for that one? Do we want to see this one come back? Is this one appropriate for consent?
No, it's action.
It's action. So, okay, so this one would, sorry, it's a
Consent is
resolution.
Also, but I just
yeah,
say,
it's a resolution.
Right,
we want it to come back as
right.
action. Okay, so bring it back for action next time. All right, I think so. Thank you, Travis.
Travis.
Okay.
Okay, that's more like it.
You recognize me now?
Are we ready for 7.1?
Exit.
Yes, okay. So moving on to 7.1, approval of the of LPA for the Facilities Master Plan Services. All right, where are people at on, would you like to hear the presentation? Do you have questions you think you're going to want to ask on this one, or are we okay with?
I have questions. I've read the slides. If there's information in the presentation that's not in the slides that would be interesting, if you'll just read what's there, then personally I've read what's in the board packet. So
I guess maybe, is there anything, because that's how I felt too, is like there's information there, we have it, but if there's something you think we should highlight, then we should do that.
Walter, you sure? And so I would highlight that the number you see is a not to exceed number, and there's some negotiations that could take place in that for level of service, scope of service. There's some things we could provide that don't need such a high level. Maybe some other things we need to go a little heavier on. I'd like to introduce Walter Este, principal at LPA Architects, and tell you that their outfit did an outstanding job in this presentation. What they brought to us and their wealth of experience got a unanimous vote of the committee. I would be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Jerry, you want to lead us off?
Sure. So referring to the LPA proposal, there's a project plan somewhere down at towards the 3/4 of the document. I was just wondering, and so there were 2 town halls in there in the fall. Is that where, I'm wondering, where does parent input come into the process? Is that in those town halls? Are you envisioning one town hall for all the parents in the district, or individual ones at the school? I think generally my question is around, how does parent input enter into the process here?
Sure. Thanks. First of all, just so you know who I am, my name's Walter Este. I'm an architect. I'm the manager.
The thing up so the mic's closer to you. The whole.
There's
Travis,
handles underneath.
No, yeah. Thank you.
Oh.
Sorry. Tricky. Thank you.
There you go. Okay.
Great, thanks.
Okay. My name is Walter Este. I'm an architect, and I'm the Managing Director of Education for LPA out of the San Jose studio. So thanks for having me here tonight. I appreciate it. To answer your question, the schedule you saw, we prepared a preliminary schedule for the project in the RFQ response. That right now is just a preliminary schedule. So we typically do, in a district this size, we'd probably do two town hall meetings. So just to back up a little bit and explain what that is, there's really actually three times we'll have parent involvement. So the first thing, well, maybe 3, I guess. So first thing is we do a number of different online surveys. So we do students, we do parents, we do principals, we do staff, teachers. Secondly, we meet with each school site council. Typically, there's some parents involved in that arena. And then finally, we do the town halls too. And here we may do town halls at a middle school and have the kids that are going to the feeder patterns that are going to those middle schools involved in that town hall meeting. Town hall meetings would involve a large group, could be anywhere from 50 to 60. And it's typically, in some districts, they invite the entire parents, and so they could have all the parents come and look at the school sites, talk about the vision of the district, where their facilities are at, where they would like them to be, next gen learning, all those things. And so that's how we get the parent involvement. And so we typically, in all those meetings, we ask the priorities of the principals, the parents, the staff, the students. And the reason we do that, it's a way for us to find those common themes so that when we're prioritizing projects, we're able to look at those common themes and touch on what's most important to the district as a whole.
Thanks. I have other questions, but I'm happy to let other folks go.
Okay, Satish or Sylvia?
No, I've gone through most of the things and pretty good job on selecting.
Can I add one comment to that I do want to point out that this process will be tied to the strategic plan, and so everything that we do is going to include, in other words, we may be doing way more parent engagement that is tying, how does this relate to at your site specifically, where we're going as a district in relation to the strategic plan. So I don't think this is comprehensive in that way in aligning it with all the other areas that we need to focus on. Yeah, all right.
Sylvia, did you have any questions? No. Okay, Jerry, back to you.
The rest of these perhaps maybe for staff. So the scope of the project, does it include the sites that we're renting out or just the sites that we're occupying right now?
A facility master plan, it could include the lease sites and what your intention is for that, because we still own those sites. So typically what you would see is your plan moving forward for the sites that you have. Sometimes you'll see districts that have closed a site that reopen it due to some sort of population growth that was unexpected. You may see districts that are declining enrollment that have plans in their facility master plan. If we were to close school X, what would we do with that school? What would it look like? Those sorts of things. So yeah, it certainly could include that if we chose.
Okay, so that's a decision we can make. And I guess the other thing is I know we've talked about in the future years having maker spaces at the schools, and I just want to, I presume that even though it hasn't come in front of the board, this is something staff has been working on and therefore would be included in the scope of this study, right?
Yes, and then along with the strategic plan, you develop a set of what they call ed specs, and the ed specs are how do you teach and how do you set up a classroom and what works at each site. And those ed specs are typically included in a facility master plan. And now facility master plans are digitized, so if we come back 5 years and we want to upgrade it, then LPA's fee is substantially less to come in and help us do that. And so it's a living document at this point. Didn't used to be. It used to be 300 pages of a lot of trees. Yeah.
And so speaking of that then, there was a document on the different proposals, right? There was a sort of a grid, and one of them, there was a column that was a website, and I think one of the other firms had an amount there for website. There wasn't there for LPA. I was just wondering, would a community website with information be part of the proposal, or how would the community stay engaged with the work that's being done? Would it be available online, or are there other communication mechanisms?
Yeah, I believe in our proposal we talk about developing a website. It's something we do pretty commonly now with all our districts, because nobody wants to go through all the binders. They get stuck on a shelf and they collect dust and they go away. But just the cautionary tale about the website, we typically, what we've learned by doing these over the past probably 3 or 4, is to make sure we load enough information in the beginning, because we don't have, it's not like it happens very fast. This is a year-long process. So we try and make sure and talk about all the good work the district has done to date, what some of the existing issues are in the district, talk about the educational program and vision of the district, and then we slowly upload new links and new documents to that as the program develops. So as we may present something to a facility master plan committee, the next day we may upload that so that people can now refer back to those documents that we talked about.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
I don't have any more questions.
So I have 2. So I'm going to tag on to Jerry's question and say I assume our district office would be considered as well in
Absolutely.
Our facilities master plan and
Yes.
long-term planning around that.
Absolutely.
That's one of my bugaboos. And then my other is, and this may be a naive question, but I'm not sure which one of you it's for, but in the facilities master planning process, one of the unique things about our district is that we serve 6 different and have to work with 6 different jurisdictions. Is there a part of this process that opens lines of communication with the individual cities to make sure we're set up for success in being able to execute on any projects that end up in our facilities master plan that we need to articulate with the cities on?
I think that the elements where you would do that is if you're constructing new buildings, like at Cupertino with the event center. There was some, I wasn't here then, but I know I read some of the newspaper articles about what went on there with
That's
the
where I'm
parking.
going with this. You're on.
Exactly. And so anytime you're looking at modernization, it's not such an impact. You need to understand, and we communicate with the cities on noise ordinances, times that we're allowed to work, how early can we start, how late can we work, those sorts of things. But anytime you build a new building, then you're either dealing with an environmental impact report, which is not typical for adding a building to a school, or a mitigated negative declaration, which is a reduced measure of an environmental impact report, which is to say, yes, you're going to have an impact on the community, reach out to the community, how are we going to mitigate these things? You're going to have a little bit of additional traffic, or you're going to have an egress here, et cetera, and then you mitigate those things, and it's much less of an effort as an EIR if you built a whole new school maybe.
And then because it came up in the Homestead Corridor discussions, some of the cities have asked us whether or not there's anything we can do on our sites that would help with exactly what you're saying, traffic flow. Would that be stuff that we would be able to even explore as a part of this? And
I've been in meetings with several jurisdictions with regard to that, and in fact, the one with you there that day, which was very informative. Things we can do on our site in concert with things the city may do. So the city widens a road and puts a level 4 bike lane in. How does that impact our site?
Ingress and egress.
A great example, again, is Cupertino Middle, and where do we get kids on the campus? Do we have the kids come all the way down and then hook a right, or do we get them on the field and then have some sort of path of travel that's actually on our campus and separate from the roadway? So certainly we like to work with the jurisdictions, let them do their part, but at least make it all mesh so it's safe for kids.
So I guess, though, in the scope of the facilities master plan, is there an item in that checklist that kind of looks at that on all sites?
We can certainly incorporate that in where we're looking at, because it is a big priority for us, is traffic flow. It's a priority, I know, for the city of Cupertino to get parents in and through. So yes, we can, in short, yes.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so do we?
We can take action, or if you would like it to come back, we can do that, right?
So I guess the recommended action here is for a contract not to exceed $391,950, but in the fee in the proposal, it's really like $450 plus a 10%. So could you clarify the two numbers?
Absolutely. So what we did was create a spreadsheet that kind of showed apples to apples of the 6 firms that presented. So you put apples to apples. There were some elements of LPAs from we just knew right out the gate we didn't need, so we removed those elements. As far as the reimbursables go, it can be negotiated later time. We could do reproduction ourselves, that sort of thing, and so that could be negotiated. That's where we came up with that final 391.
So tonight you're asking for the 391 number?
Not to exceed 391,
Not
yes.
to exceed.
Are people comfortable with taking action tonight? Do you want me to call for a motion?
So, because they pretty much, what else, anything more, I don't know. Like,
Sylvia, you're comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that.
Jerry, you're comfortable with that? Okay, so can I call for a motion then on 7.1, approval of LPA for Facilities Master Planning Services?
So I move that we approve a contract award to LPA in the amount not to exceed $391,950 for the Facilities Master Plan Services.
Can I get a second?
Second that.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, sorry, 4-0. Thank you. Okay, I'm still learning. And that passes 4-0. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so 7.2 is the 2019 CSBA Delegate Assembly runoff. Just a little background I mentioned last time, or do you want to do this? That there was a tie for one of the seats, the remaining seat on the Delegate Assembly, and it's Melissa Baton-Caswell of Palo Alto Unified School District and George Sanchez of Franklin McKinley down in the east side. And so we're being asked to come back and vote for one or the other as a part of a runoff election. I would be happy to give you kind of what I understand from the lay of the land from the County School Board Association, if you'd find that helpful.
Sure.
Okay. So Melissa is newly elected to be the Santa Clara County School Boards Association president, so I do think that she would have good insight into some of the wider issues going on into our county next year. She also, represents a district from the north end of the county, which if you break it north, central, and southern end of the county, northern end of the county doesn't have as much representation. We're kind of a district that straddles the northern end and the central part of the county. So I guess I would probably put forward that I believe, for representing our district, Melissa's probably the better choice of the two, but I'm happy to entertain a conversation.
I guess I don't know either of the candidates, but looking at the material here, I think certainly both are very qualified. Since you know a bit more about this, I'm happy to go with Melissa. I think both of them look very qualified.
There's
so.
not a bad choice, absolutely, right. Yes. So, and you know, George has represented down there on the east side for a long time, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Looking at the spread, I think there's nobody in Palo Alto right now, so.
Okay. So are we comfortable if I call for a motion for voting for Melissa Baton-Caswell to fill that remaining spot for CSBA delegate for Region 20? Okay, so can I get a motion?
To
vote to nominate Melissa Baton-Caswell.
Melissa,
okay.
Yeah, Baton-Caswell for
Region 20
Region
CSBA.
26 runoff.
Okay.
Yep.
And a second.
Second.
Great. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. All right. So moving on to 7.3, Board Policy 3580, District Records and Data Retention Policy. This is coming back to us again based on questions that we had last time. And there was some replaced text that was in there that we probably all hopefully saw. Jeff, do you have anything you want to add?
Just 2 quick points to Board Member Lou's questions last time about ethnicity. So ethnicity is not a mandatory record, so it's not something we have to keep. We're permitted to keep it, but it's not mandatory. Okay. And so from that standpoint, the only things that are mandatory are anything that is tied back directly to the student's school of attendance, which does not include ethnicity at that point. So just that point of clarity. Second one was, what we did is we went back to the language that we wrote up in the bottom, and we adjusted the language around encryption. And I think it better meets to your point with it, is separating out the 2 items with it.
Go ahead.
I have a sort of a comment and a question. So first of all, thank you for separating out the language. It reads much clearer now. So now I want to talk a bit about the substance of the policy here. So in particular, the conditions under which we would notify the community. So the way I read this, basically 3 things. So it says, district discovers that information has been, there's been a breach of security, that the key has been acquired by an authorized person, and the third condition seems to be that the agency that owns or licenses the information has a reasonable belief that that the encryption key could render that personal information readable. So it seems like the 3 conditions here, right? You have to have a breach. Someone has to, so we know reasonably a breach happened. Right. We know reasonably that someone has access to the key. Right, but then the third one basically says that agencies that owns the information has to believe that they were able to unencrypt it for the public to be notified. And I guess I'm wondering about that third condition, because it seems like this is a way for whoever owns this or whatever vendor we use to say, oh no, even though a breach has happened and someone took the key, yeah, we don't believe that it's been unencrypted and therefore block the release. So I guess that's the thing I'm concerned about is because there's a value judgment there, right? But the first 2 conditions are factual. Either you had a breach or not, either someone took the key or not. But that third condition now is a judgment call on someone. And whoever makes this call, they have honestly a vested interest to basically say, no, it didn't happen, right? So I wanted to explore this a little bit and understand why that clause is in there. And yeah, does that make sense, Jeff?
It does. What I would say is I would add 2 parts to it. First one, in California, we do have the Buchanan bill that backs up data privacy. The other piece of our data breaches, I should say, the other piece of it is for any contract that we enter into a vendor. So anything, in particular for ed services, when you have student information in it, we have an additional contract that we use with our vendors that actually calls out data breaches. And it talks about the conditions in which the vendor has to respond for data breaches and what we define as a timely manner. So one of the questions that came up last time, what is the timeline to response? Something we talked about. California doesn't necessarily have a definitive timeline, but they have approximately within 30 days you should be able to reasonably review if there was an actual breach. With our vendors, we keep it very tight too, that within those 30 days they actually have to inform us. And so it also talks about what levels. But you are right. The first two tend to be a little bit easier, more factual. The third one has a little bit of openness to it. What I would also say is there is openness around this broader than just this policy. Because there has to be a piece where you're seeing the personal identifiable information, that PII information, actually being taken or being used by somebody, or being viewed by somebody else.
I see. So what you're saying is there could be cases where there's been a breach and the key has been lost, but since we don't see it out there for sale, we could say, well, we don't have to say anything about it because we don't have any evidence that they were actually able to decrypt the information.
We would have to have a reasonable assurance that they were not able to decrypt it. Just because they haven't sold it, that's not what we're talking about.
Okay.
But it's reasonably being able to see a driver's license, a social security number, a credit card number, that through our searches that are conducted, that we have reasonable evidence to say something could be out there. And at that point in time, we owe it to that individual that has had the information taken to inform them of that.
I see. Okay. So that's what that third condition is we have to there has to be evidence that the decryption did happen with a key. Just losing the key and losing the information these aren't strong enough conditions to trigger public notification.
But I would say it's really hard not to have that if those first two conditions are breached.
Right.
If you lose your key and you lose your device, I would say at that point, more times than not, I can't say every time, but I would say more times than not, you're in a breach.
Right, and so why would that third clause be in there? It seems like that third clause basically gives the vendor a way to block release of the information. Because I agree with you, if you've lost your information, you've lost your key, I think you should tell people. Why are we waiting for the agency to make a determination on whether or not the decryption has happened? I guess this is where I'm kind of a little stuck here.
The sentence fragment that we're talking about has a reasonable belief that the encryption key or security credential could render that personal information readable. So it seems to me that in most cases, actually, we would have to assume that it could be rendered readable because it's kind of hard. Like, what evidence would we have that it's not? So I guess a part of the question is why. What is the downside of saying, well, it seems reasonable to us that they have, it's missing. We know the data, they have a key or whatever. Those conditions have been met already.
Well, we actually need to have a little bit of openness. So if somebody goes into an email account and you open up an email, you click on something that you shouldn't click on, you instantly go and you change your password, and there's never been an IP address that gets a hit on the back end when we go to check it, you haven't had a breach. You may have had the first two criteria met, but if our window of time of changing that, we have to have the ability to do a little bit of investigation without pinpointing into or pigeonholing us into a specific action.
I think I understand, Jeff. What you're saying is there could be false positives. That you need determination of the first two conditions, and therefore you need that third one in there as a escape clause to not be forced into basically inundating people with. Because that would be just as bad if you get like 3 of these a day that district is losing information. Okay. All right, that makes sense to me then. Thank you.
And you do get cases where you're almost incriminating yourself over something that never went wrong. Right. But we always will default that if we think it's out there, we're going to respond.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. That makes sense.
Okay. So this was up for discussion action. Do we feel like it needs to come back, or are we ready to take action on that?
Spoken, I think, last time also. The clarification.
So, Jerry, you're okay if I call for a motion? Okay. Okay, so can I get a motion on 7.3, Board Policy 3580, District Records and Data Retention Policy?
I move to approve 7.3, Board Policy 3580, District Records and Data Retention Policy.
Great, can I get a second?
Second it.
Okay, so Sylvia and Satish. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. Okay, so next up is 7.4, our English Language Arts update and recommendation for K-5 reading adoption. Looks like it's Lynn. And I guess, so because this one's already come before us as well, Lynn, do you have anything like that you feel like you want to add tonight, or do you want me to ask my colleagues if they...
Sure, we can just go to questions. Okay.
Or maybe just In a motion and a
Entertain a
second,
motion
if you
in a
want to do
second.
that.
Where are you guys
I
at?
think I'll entertain a motion.
Sylvia, are you ready for a motion, or do you
I'm
have?
ready for a motion.
Okay, so can I go ahead and call for a motion to approve the recommendation for the K-5 reading adoption?
Yeah, so moved.
In a second?
A second.
Okay. You're good with us taking action, I assume? Any further discussion? Okay. So, call for a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, thank you, team, for all of your hard
you.
work on that. Motion carries 4-0. Excellent. Okay. High five again. All right, so now we are on to.
We added 7.5 here.
Oh, thank you so much.
Item
Yes.
4.6.
We have item 4.6 to come back. Thank you very much for catching that for me, which was from our consent items, which was the Summer Institute that goes along with this reading program. So can I get a motion for 4.6 from consent?
I move that we approve the contract with the Homegrown Summer Institute for reading, writing. I move to approve the Homegrown Summer Institute contract with Reading Writing Project Network, LLC.
Great, and a second?
Second it.
Great, thank you, Jerry and Satish. So all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, motion carries 4-0. Okay. On to our RIF, reduction in force, 8.1 for our classified reductions. So because this is action, I do know that Craig and Stacy or Stacy have some information for us on this item to kind of frame the recommendation and where it's coming from, but this is action, so we do need to get a motion in a second and to get us started, and then we can hear from staff and have a discussion and hear public. I believe we do have one public comment still, right? Yes, and one public comment. So can I get a motion for 8.1?
Moved for item 8.1, adoption of resolution number 181914.
And a second?
Second this. Follow.
And so now we can hear from staff. Great, thank you, Stacy.
Thank you. Thank you for an opportunity just to provide some clarity and context around this resolution. But first, I think just acknowledging whenever we do layoffs and reductions, they're difficult because even though we try to phrase them in terms of positions, we know that ultimately a position is attached to a person, and so we're always affecting people's livelihoods. So just acknowledging that. These are never easy conversations, but with the layoffs, because under the Ed Code we are allowed to reduce certain positions either due to a lack of fund or a lack of work, they really get blended all together, and so there oftentimes is confusion. On the resolution tonight, there's a lot of FTEs because we refer to everything as a full-time position, and so ultimately it could be more than one person under an FTE. So thought if I could break down the resolution might help a little bit for you. And so I think when looking at all of these positions, there's a couple different areas that are going on where we're looking at reductions for it. The first one is under our instructional assistants specialized. What we really have been looking at is with our whole special education program, we have certain requirements when we do our staffing, when we try to follow our staffing protocols and procedures. And so under certain areas, we have a contract that we do abide by for staffing. We also then go into the IEPs and look at the special education needs for it. And then in addition, over the last 6 months, we've been working through our special ed audit, really looking at where we are with staffing, where we are with our entire programs, and trying to make some of those decisions, really difficult decisions because we're facing a budget deficit, we're facing a declining enrollment, and all of those go together and continue to contribute each year that we need to maintain balance. I think I've shared before with the certificated, oftentimes it's easier to do reductions because with our teacher reductions, through attrition, they just go away and we don't necessarily bring them to the board every year that say we're doing 10 less teachers because through attrition they've been dissolved. But with classified, they really are something that we have to come in and recognize this position is vacant, we're no longer going to need it, or we have to reduce here. So that's really what that combination is. Under the instructional assistants, we really looked at contracts, we looked at our special ed needs, and then we looked at where we were comparably to other districts with our instructional assistants, and we were significantly overstaffed compared to other districts. We also recognize that we operate a CAP program, which is very different and unique and has a lot of high needs. But again, looking at all those figures, we're really overstaffed. And so we did make some tough decisions where we are going to reduce the IAs. The 12 FTEs equivalent to about 16 positions. And what happens with classified layouts, we don't get to select where that happens from. So Ed Code actually dictates to us where that happens. Our contracts also require us to follow that. So first on a layoff is always our probationary personnel before anyone that's permanent. So we really do just start taking our probationary. Once we're through probationary, we go through a seniority. So there is the possibility that staff may be moved around from site to site. We do some of that anyway every year as we're looking at staffing. So that's really what that part of the layoff is. The other piece of the layoff is when we start looking at our staffing that we follow for certificated and for classified. We really do try to be equitable and consistent in how we staff across the sites. And so on many of the sites, we start with a baseline of what the district is going to provide. And then we look at enrollment of student population. We look at what are the special programs that are on the sites and can allocate additional staffing. But again, we do that equivalently across the board to all of our sites. And so as we've been in declining enrollment and as we are facing some of these budget difficulties, we really have gone in and started to look. And over the last couple of years, I think we've gotten somewhat generous in some of our staffing, because we weren't into a tight budget, and so we started looking at each of our site and applying back what are our formulas, what are our processes, what is our staffing ratios, and found some areas that we really were overstaffed and needed to start pulling those back. So all the needs of the campuses are still met under our foundational staffing ratio, but we did need to pull some of those back. And for example, the school secretary, even though that's a one FTE, it's actually 3 different positions, but small pieces of different positions that have been added over the year by an hour or 2 hours, and so those would be pulled back. The third area, I think, really is, if we look at the bottom of the sheet, those are really site-funded positions, and so it comes up every year. Sites, through their PTAs, fund different positions, and then they have to have those difficult conversations. We ask them to start having them in February, March. What is your parent funding looking like for the following year? Are you able to cover these additional positions? Because this is something that the sites have chosen they wanted to either offer the position on their own or to increase hours. And so each year, the principals with their PTAs sit down and take a look and decide where their funding is, what positions do they really want to keep, which they can't keep, and then they bring them forward to us in April of each year. The other thing to really, you know, what our effort is one of the reasons we always try to start this as early as possible is so that we can sit down and meet with staff and notify them, look at where we are futuristically. We know that we may have some vacancies coming up, things that we haven't publicly said that we know somebody is going to be resigning. And so anyone that's affected by the layoff, our goal really is to find them a position within the district. Some of these are already been vacant positions for the entire year or for six months. So they've been vacant, there's not a person involved in them. The positions, the jobs have kind of absorbed that work, and so those are, quote, easier layoffs to do. The other ones, we know that somebody is going to be leaving a position. We know that we're going to be able to offer somebody a laid-off position to slide right into it. So that really is our goal, is to have a position for every person at the end of the year. So hopefully that helps a little bit, and certainly open to answering any questions or clarify any more.
Does anybody have any clarifying questions they want to ask before we take a public comment?
Some of these positions, right, when we are eliminating the service or that's the specific, like let's say instructional assistant or IT systems, for example. So this, is it like that work will be covered by somebody else, right?
So the IT programmer position, we had a person leave a position, and unfortunately someone passed away that became a vacant, and that position's been sitting vacant since November. And so the work that the 4 IT programmers were doing has just kind of been absorbed by the 3 as things have changed. And so they've been able to function without filling that position. And so we've carried it on the books all year, but it's vacant. We don't need to hire it, so we take it off the books so that we can recoup that money into the general fund.
In other way, if I think just to make it much more clearer, this elimination by eliminating these positions, some of the services or the real work overall, that condom work will be distributed, or that will get completely. Basically, it's lost, or it's like that services will be lost, or there will be work. Somebody to support that.
So it's not lost because it's already been covered with the existing people that are there. So it really is just sitting there as a vacant position without a loss of any of the work being done. So those are, those I like to think of as the easier in that term, because there's not a person associated. It's not affecting other people's work.
So just to clarify, the bottom half, starting with the IA1, IA2 school library, those are the ones that are funded by the PTA, PTOs?
Correct.
And did you say every year these same ones come up, or?
Every year the sites take a look at what their budget is going to be from their PTA and make decisions. Some years it's very minimal, other years it's more extensive. It really does depend on what parent donations are and where the direction the site is going.
So if that's a PTA, PTO decision, then what is our role?
Because they're still staff of the district, because even though they're paid for by a PTA, they become a staff member, an employee of the district, and so we're responsible, and they fall under the same contract and ed code as any of our employees do.
So the other thing to know is it doesn't actually change those don't change our bottom line, because those are dollars that the PTA, PTOs give to us, which pays the position. They get to decide whether they don't want those positions in because they're paying for it. So it doesn't actually change our bottom line, essentially. Yeah.
Jerry?
Yeah, I have 2 sets of questions, one around the process and the other around, I guess, impact. So first on the process, just so I understand, because I was trying to understand, we start with a dollar amount, some dollar amount we need to take out of the system. And it sounds like what you're describing is, one, we want to make sure we abide with a contract. We make sure we take care of the special ed needs. And then you look at the rest, and then this is where I got a little fuzzy. So it sounds like what you're saying is in some categories, we are overstaffed relative to other districts. Is that, and could you maybe say a bit more about what does that mean? Is that, so in the case of instructional assistants, do we just have a higher ratio than some of the other neighboring districts, a ratio of IAs to teachers? Or could you say a bit more about what you mean by overstaffed?
Sure. So we start with, under our contract, we allocate a certain number of IAs for every special day class. And so we have actual numbers where if we reach a certain level, then we add an additional IA. So for the past years, we've actually been providing extra IAs than what the contract calls for. So that was our first step, to go in and look at what are our classes, what do we absolutely should be offering to meet our contract needs. Then we went into IEPs and the whole special ed, what do we need to be providing, knowing that sometimes contractual doesn't address the special needs of the classroom. So with our special ed department, went through and looked at, do some classes need an additional IA for a different reason? Are there some other student needs in there? Really, so we're meeting all of our obligations under the IEP. Then just kind of that top layer was, we looked at our total number of IAs and did a comparison of all our other districts, and we had probably 1.5 times the number of IAs that the other districts did. So above and beyond, we're already putting extra IAs in, and above and beyond that, we have extra IAs. So it is an impact to the classes, and we recognize that. But what's happening is, very creatively, we're trying to meet with each of the sites and really look at what their staffing is and how their needs are, and be real creative, because I think over years things have been added and never taken away, and so instead of looking at how we can fix it, we just added on to things instead of going in and saying, what is our real need here? And so in some of the classes we were ending up with the same number of adults as students, and so is that the most effective for the student? Is that really meeting their needs as well? And we really looked at all of those pieces to layer back. So it wasn't just one criteria that we used.
Okay, so the 1.5, I just want to make sure I understand. Is that an absolute number, or is that on a sort of a per capita student basis?
One of the ratios was a staffing in other districts in the classroom was a 12-to-1 ratio. Ours was about a 6-to-1.
I see. Okay. And then I guess in the second one around impact, I guess following what Sylvia is saying, so I think I understand that second category are, I guess, positions that's generally be funded by parent support organizations. So hypothetically, I think one of the speakers had talked about, a school ending up with 2 hours of library, the media clerk. So if the parent organization did not pick that up, will we just end up for the next year with literally 2 hours of library staffing at that school, or what would happen? It seems like there's an equity issue here then.
Well, so all the schools are given the same allocation from the district funded, and unfortunately this does come down to that inequity of sites that raise more money from parent groups, and so some sites are able to supplement more than others, but all the sites are funded from district perspective equitably.
So the decision of whether or not to put money into media clerk versus something else, that would be the site principal that would make that decision.
Site principal in conjunction with the parents.
Oh, yes, of course, right. Right, okay. All right, thank you. I don't have any more clarifying questions.
So we do have one public comment. So Marissa Kakmarski. Okay.
Good evening. I am a SITS at Stockmeyer, and I'm here to lobby a little bit on our behalf. We are, as you know, we are a beast of an elementary school, and as we look at equity across the district, the problem we have is that we have special needs that kind of dictate that we need to have maybe a little extra equity sometimes. For example, I know that one of our school secretaries is on the list to cut her hours. We actually have 3 3/4 secretary time because we have 4 secretaries and one is already 3/4 time. It's still not enough. We don't have an SBC, and we actually have a unique situation at our school because we have 2 lunches, 2 recesses. And so if you think about the fact that we have an hour and a half of children lunches, and if we cut down that time, we're also cutting into what these secretaries can get done during the day. Because during lunchtime, they can't do a lot of the other duties that they need to be doing because they're either rotating for lunches or they're dealing with kids and teachers. So it's really, for us, cutting time at the front desk is really going to be a difficult task for us. The other thing I want to mention is our school media clerk. Our library has classrooms in it, and I'm not talking about single classrooms. Half of the week, we have 2 classes at a time coming through the library, and there are 2 empty slots the whole week. And if you cut her hours, that means that classes are going to have to go in there without the support of a librarian, and we may have to look at the idea of supporting it with site funds, which we don't want to do. We would like to keep it at district money, but we don't want to affect the children and affect their experience in the library by cutting back and making the teacher and the parent volunteers handle all the work, and let's have that experienced adult in the room. So I just want to make a ploy. I hate being one of those people that says not in my backyard, but at the same time, Stockmeyer is a large gem, and we'd like to keep it the special place that it is. Thank you.
Okay. So any other discussion?
Please go ahead, Satish.
Yeah, so I think it's a continuation with what Jerry asked. So now the new ratio would be what then? Like we said, like we are like 1:12 kind of, but yeah, we are 1:6, and when you compare to comparable districts are 1:12 kind of, right? So the IAs kind of mainly.
So under our contract, what we provide to all of our special day, which are our mod to severe classes, we provide at minimum two IAs Those are 6-hour IAs for up to every 10 students, and in our mild to mod, it's up to 15 students, 2 IAs. And so we had been staffing with 3 with those ratios versus our minimum was supposed to be 2. So that was the first step we looked at, which is comparable to other districts as the 2.
I had another question related to the SDC classes. So with the way that the contracts work, if you're reducing that number and then having to switch IAs around, is there any consideration for, because I know with the special ed children, the relationships that, you know, are built and the routines that are built is very important. What kind of consideration is there for that, or is it very much we have to just base it on these regulations, I guess?
Both. Ed Code requires us to go through a seniority list, as does their contract, so we're very cognizant of that. We go on a seniority list. But every year we do some movement depending on where our programs are and the hours of the IA, so we really do try to take both of those into consideration. Sometimes the IAs may agree to reduce hours, and so then that allows them to stay at their site. So it's really a lot of working parts, and it's, you know, if one person opts to bump another person, then we try to work with that person. So it's a true domino effect that is going to take us probably the next couple of weeks to figure out. One of the parts that works this year is we do have probationary employees, and so according to Ed Codes, those would be the first people released.
Questions or comments? Go ahead, Jerry.
Let's see. Sorry. So I wanted to sort of pop back to the big picture. So I think when we got the financial update, we talked about taking $2.9 million out of the personnel costs out of the system. So today, this is for 935-ish. Are you in a position to talk about where the other $2 million are, or are we not ready to do that at this point?
It's not.
That's not.
It's not on the agenda, so we really.
Okay.
Right, that's not what we're discussing per se. But.
Sure. Okay. All right. Fair enough. A definitional question. I just realized. What's a specialized instructional assistant versus a gen ed? I realized I didn't know what that was.
So our specialized are all of our IAs that provide service to our special education students, and under our program, our gen ed could be, we don't fund any gen ed positions as the district. Those would be all positions that are funded by the site and could be used at the site to go into the classroom to support reading. That would be at the discretion of them.
Understand. Okay. All right. I guess I you know, some of you may know I spend a lot of time in the library. It's something I've spent. So I have a thing for libraries, and I think the thought of a school library ending up with only 2 hours of staffing really bothers me not. But I understand. It sounds like from what Dr. Baker's clarification here is that the site principal could staff that library if he or she chose to. Of course, I know everyone's under a lot of constraints, and so it's not. Is that something?
So I'm gonna point of order and say maybe that would be an item to bring back on agenda requests.
Well, what I'd say is that when we do budget conversations, the board always has the right to say we think 2 isn't enough, and you'll look at it up against how much money we're trying to save, et cetera, and we'll have the conversation.
No, I'm not trying to argue for particular. I'm asking about the process. I was just confirming my understanding of the process that the principals do have that authority to do that. I'm not pushing for we should put money here. That's not the. Right. Sorry if I made that unclear. I'm asking about the process of how the allocation happens. And it's
right. So the allocations are distributed equitably to the sites from the district based on budget that was agreed upon, and then yes, beyond that, the sites have the ability to say we'd like to fund additional. Yeah.
Just say a lot of times it's not that the principals want to make the decision to cut a member of their staff. It really comes down to a cost factor that they're not bringing the dollars. to afford that position anymore. The one thing we do as a district is we try and balance that out for all 25 schools, so it's a shared cost, so you're not having to pay step and column increases at the school site, so you can keep your great employees that you've had for 20 years and not worry about the step and column because it's averaged for all the positions in the district. But at some points for some of our schools, especially our smaller ones, they're not bringing in the dollars that can fund that position any longer. So it's not so much the principal wants that position to go away, they just don't, they actually don't have the dollars to support it.
Thank you.
I think the other piece to add on to that too is it's not uncommon. We ask the principals to make these decisions now, and they literally are getting them to us at the end of last week because they are looking at their funds. If additional parent funds come in, it's not uncommon for in the fall for them to come back and say we'd like to add back that hour or add an additional hour. So it's always continually moving, but it is based on what funding they have at their site.
Thank you.
I can add similarly, we will continue to do analyses of are we being equitable across all the schools based on the number of kids, et cetera. So to the point of the speaker, we will take a look at that, and if it is true that in fact it's we have inequitable distribution, we will reconsider and we'll come back and talk about that. So yeah, we never stop doing that because that's really critical. That's where we started actually. We said we have to be fair and equitable in how we do distribution of the funds that we do have, and it's not fair for us to have certain sites that district is paying for when others have just the same need but don't have those resources. So we'll take a look at the equity question.
Can I ask another clarification question? So you had said that you try to, so a lot of these positions are going to, or a lot of the staffing of those positions will actually slide into other existing positions?
That is our intent, is always to find another position that may be vacant, or as one comes vacant, they would have first options back for them. So we, without going into personnel details, we know that we have a couple resignations that we believe are forthcoming, and that will open up positions that would then be offered to people that are affected by the layoff.
So in terms of the actual, because we are just seeing kind of the total number of FTEs, most of these are just reduction of hours? Is that what I'm understanding correctly, or am I?
So the site-based are reduction of hours. The upper 6 ones tend to be complete positions, but they could be less than 8-hour positions. So for example, our staff secretary too, that is not a full-time position. They're a 6-hour employee. But it is one particular.
I see. Okay. So
it's 18 FTEs, and I believe it's a total of actual bodies is 35 or 34 total.
But it's not, we're not actually eliminating 35 positions.
Correct.
It's reduction. Some of them are reductions of hours, and some of them are
reductions of a full position.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a mixture of both.
Okay.
Enrollment declining also is part of, like, it's based on that as well.
Pardon me?
The enrollment.
Declining enrollment.
Yeah.
The declining enrollment, really, that plays a part when we're looking at our staffing ratios on our site. For example, our secretaries, we start with a minimum that every site is staffed with, and then if the enrollment is at a certain level, they get extra hours. As it declines, we need to go back to our baseline staffing, and that had not happened over the last 2 years.
Are we ready to move?
Do we have a motion?
Do we have we have a motion and a second. Thank you for the reminder. We do. So I think, is everybody ready to call for a vote? And so I will do that. So all in favor of resolution number 18-19-14, reduction of classified staff due to lack of work and or lack of funds. All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 4-0, and because this one's a resolution, calls out as well 1 absent. Okay. So moving on to 9.1, board and superintendent activity and committee reports. Okay.
We still have a closed session.
Yeah. Anybody want to start? Sylvia?
schools.
Yeah, it's the greatest part, right? That's what makes the rest of this worth it. Yes. Okay.
But say 3 school visits,
Yeah.
central kitchen visit, so 4, plus this one MIG, 2 days.
Oh, Masters in Governance, that's
yeah,
right.
so
Yes.
2 days. So pretty busy week, 2 weeks. Yep.
Jerry?
Just 2 things. One, Lori and I are meeting with, I think, some members of the Los Altos City Council tomorrow morning. So that's a start of our sort of strategic engagement. The other thing also was at the last Cupertino City Council meeting, they had an update on the Apple engagement, right? And they talked a lot about a lot of the proposed improvements that Apple were sort of related to school. One of the comments that the City Council had back for the city staff was to be kept more in the loop of sort of the discussions, because apparently some of those discussions started in the fall and they never brought anything back to the council until just now. And I guess I would maybe just echo that if it's possible, if there aren't any confidentiality type of things, if we engage in further discussions on traffic improvements, just an update, an occasional update to the board would be nice. So thanks.
So I know I'm not the only ones. I'll just mention real quick, just so people know that we're going to them. NGSS had the curriculum materials review session that I know I and some of my fellow board members attended. Phyllis and I, so just so that the rest of you know, there is a protocol by which the board president and vice president meet regularly with the union presidents. So we had our first meeting this calendar year, and have now met with the presidents of all 3 unions. And then to follow on to what Jerry said with the strategic partnerships, one of the cities that I was supposed to reach out to was Santa Clara, and so Santa Clara has come back with to us. Their mayor and 2 of their council members would like to start up a strategic partnership with us, so we'll get the ball rolling on a meeting with the city of Santa Clara. And then really quickly, CEF has put out that they are accepting applications for their annual Sandy Lou Community Service Leadership Award. The application period for that closes Friday, April 26th, so spread the word, because we have many deserving community leaders and volunteers in this district. And then just a future-looking one that there's been a lot of planning going on behind the scenes for the kickoff of the 25 Coalition, which will bring parent leaders and principals from all 25 sites together, and that is currently scheduled, the kickoff for April 29th. That's what I have for you. And do you have any updates for us? Okay. So then moving on to agenda setting.
So I had one item. So I had reached out to Chappie Jones, who's the council member and vice mayor for San Jose that covers our district. He is also up for meeting with us. And so I don't know if we had appointed people for, I think there's Los Altos, Sunnyvale, Cupertino. So maybe an agenda item for the future to sort of staff that San Jose liaison role, I guess.
I guess Santa Clara should be on that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we haven't heard anything back from Saratoga, correct? Not yet.
Yeah.
Okay. So
we'll agendize a revisiting the committees that involve 2 by 2 kind of things, and then we'll talk about all of them.
Yes.
And,
okay.
yeah,
Great.
Yeah.
And then, so only one, huh? You're not going to put forward libraries? I'll put forward libraries. I'd love to see us talk the school libraries at some point and get an update from what that looks like across the district, and you know, how that enhances student learning.
Okay.
Excellent idea.
Thank you.
I'll note that we, I do want to say that we're going to talk about our board agendas in general at the next meeting, because we do have to talk about a few dates, and I think Satish had raised a question regarding potential advances not being, you know, maybe on weekends instead of during the week, et cetera. So we're going to talk about that at the next meeting. I do want to point out that CSBA this year, and that's the other thing we're going to talk about, is are we going to CSBA, which is down in San Diego, but we actually have an advance scheduled at this time on the date of that as well. So we have calendaring and things like that we have to deal with. And that includes the December 5 board advance that we have is at the same time. as the CSBA conference. We'll talk about that next time.
Sorry, I meant to add that in mine and I forgot to write it down. I believe, I want to say it's May 23rd, but is when the Southwest flights go on sale for the window that CSBA is in. So I'll make a point of sending everybody a reminder for when those Southwest flights go on sale.
And that's all managed through Renee, and so that should go to her.
I'll send it to Renee then, and Renee can push it out to us. So she makes our flight reservations, huh?
She's very happy I just said that, by the way.
Okay. All right. So I believe we are, do we have any public comments on closed session?
No, we do not.
No, we do not. Okay. So I believe we are ready to adjourn to closed session, right?
Correct.
And I gavel that?
Yes.
Okay. Adjourning to closed session. Gavel I now. Okay. Thank you, everyone.